Good evening and welcome to the September meeting of the Overrule and Scrutiny Committee. My name is Councillor Osborne, Chairman of the Overrule and Scrutiny Committee. This meeting is being held remotely. It's being live streamed via YouTube and the recording of it will be available afterwards on our website. Councillors and officers are reminded to put their mobile phone on silent, and if they have one near them, and mute their microphones when not speaking, as this will reduce feedback and background noise and saves bandwidth and loss of connection. If you are a member of this committee, please leave your camera on. I will first do a roll call to check all members who are expected to attend are present. As I say your name, please turn on your microphone and confirm that you are connected. Councillor Barnes. Councillor Barnes? Not yet. Councillor Carroll.
I don't know what.
Councillor Carroll? Going well so far. Councillor Clark?
Councillor Clark is present.
Yeah, I can see you. Councillor Cook?
Present.
Councillor Cortale?
Present.
Councillor Drayson?
Present.
Councillor Earl Williams?
Here. Present.
Welcome. Councillor Errington?
Present.
Councillor Gray?
Present.
Councillor Langland?
Present.
Councillor Maynard?
Present.
Councillor Mooney?
Present.
And me? Present. So I just try again on Councillor Barnes? Nope. And Councillor Carroll? Nope. Oh, well. Joining us today are Malcolm Johnson, Executive Director.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Dr. Tony Leonard, Executive Director.
Present, Chairman.
Thank you. Joe Powell, Head of Service, Housing and Community.
Present, Chairman.
And Tony Baden, Finance Manager.
Present, Chair.
That's good. Other councillors I have named here: Councillor Coleman.
Present.
Councillor Dixon.
Present.
Councillor Mrs. Kirby Green.
Present.
Oh, yep. Councillor Madeley.
Present.
Yeah. Councillor Oliver, Leader of Council.
Present.
Councillor Project.
Present, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Stevens.
Present.
And Councillor Timpey.
Present, Chairman.
And if there's anybody else I've not mentioned? No.
Myself, Councillor Osborne, Councillor Bayliss.
Okay, thank you, Christine. We have two technical staff here who are looking after us, Claire and Kieran. And Democratic Services today is, as usual, Louise Hollingsworth.
Chairman.
Yep.
Chairman, sorry, it's Councillor Kirby Green. Have you got Councillor Barnes as present? Because I've just rung up and apparently he has said he's present, but I hadn't heard that.
No, I didn't hear him, I'm afraid.
No, well, he is apparently on the call and he believes he's registered. Would you mind just calling his name again?
Yeah.
Sorry, if that's possible. Thank you.
Okay, yeah. Councillor Barnes.
Present.
Aha.
Thank you.
I tried Councillor Carroll as well. We've failed on Councillor Carroll at the moment. Oh well.
Councillor Carroll is showing on the list of attendees, Chairman, but his microphone appears to be on mute.
Oh well. I don't know how we get over that one.
Chairman, could I voice once more? I can hear everybody quite clear, loud and clear, but I'm having a real problem hearing you.
And I'm present.
And Jim is present as well. Excellent. Okay. I'll carry on with the introduction. Members of the committee will be making the decisions today in a named vote. Louise will call out each member in turn and they will answer either for, against or abstain. Members, please remember to turn on your microphone again at this point. Because of the new format, members are encouraged to make their comments succinct and pertinent to ensure the smooth run of the meeting. Those members who wish to speak, please indicate by typing your surname only in the chat facility. Chat facility is persistent in that it cannot be deleted. And any inappropriate use will be deemed as a potential code of conduct matter. Officers wishing to respond, please type interject. Members who have asked a question will be asked if they wish to come back after receiving a response. So there is no need to type your surname into the chat facility again. It is a requirement that all members who have read the paperwork and published on the website. Members are reminded not to press leave meeting. If you leave the room, just remember to turn off your cameras and microphones. Please be aware there can be a time delay of around 5 seconds whilst the member officer appears on screen. Each item will be reintroduced as we get to it. And that is basically that. So, if you're all happy with that, I will move on. Agenda item number 1, minutes. To authorise myself to sign the minutes at a later date of the meeting of the Overview and Scrutiny Committee held on the 20th of July 2020 as a correct record of proceedings. I have Councillor Cook, who I assume was moving that.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I'd like to propose that we accept these minutes and that you duly record them electronically as a correct record.
Thank you. Do I need a second? I'll have a seconder for that if anybody wishes to. Anybody?
I will, Chair.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Gray. All those in favour, just say aye.
No.
Aye.
That'll do.
Aye.
Happy with that, Louise?
Yes, that's fine. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you. Apologies and substitutes. I don't believe there are any apologies. I don't believe we have any substitutes. Is that correct, Louise?
Yeah, that's correct.
Thank you. Additional agenda items, there are none. Disclosure of interest. I wouldn't think there should be too much. Councillor Maidley, do you have a disclosure of interest?
Just before that, and I'm sorry I didn't get there quick enough, I'm actually substituting for Councillor Langland, but I see she's here, so I'm not sure now what I'm doing.
All right. What's the word on that, Louise? You're in charge.
Yeah, no need for Councillor Maidley to substitute Councillor Earl Williams if she's here.
Okay.
Okay, and therefore, okay. Therefore, I will put my name up as an interest in personal interest in that I'm a member of the Bexhill Old Town Preservation Society.
Okay.
Thank you.
Chair, could I just add to that I'm also a member of Bexhill Old Town Preservation Society?
Yeah. Okay.
Thank you.
Any more for anyone? No? Have you got those two, Louise?
Yes, I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, if we move on to item 5, waste collections and beach cleansing contract review. Joe.
Thank you, Chair. Hello, everyone. Members will be aware this is for noting, I should say, this report for the committee. I should also say that at point 17 of the report, we have an update on the loss of to the council in giving a discount to existing garden waste subscribers of £5 due to the service disruption under COVID-19. I can update you that that deficit is now presently projected to be £78,000, and we expect that deficit to reduce further as more income is received through the period. Okay, so to remind members, the new BIFA contract commenced on the 29th of June 2019, and the contract operates a waste collection and street cleansing service in partnership with Wealdon and Hastings councils. As people will be aware, that the partnership is coordinated by the Joint Waste Team and is governed by the Joint Waste Recycling and Recycling Committee, which is comprised of all parties to the agreement and to the partnership. It should be noted, I think, that the present contract resulted in costs of the council of 4.6 million compared to 3.3 million the year previously under the previous contractor. And also just to remind members that the budget for 2020-21 is set for 4.4 million. We have benefited from an improved performance in the first year of operation, and it's important to stress that from the outset. I think the new contract is performing well, and we're confident that we will continue to see greater improvements as we progress. Included at point 5 of the report is a comparison between BIFA's performance and that of the previous contractor over the same 12-month period of which we're looking at presently between June and July. As you'll see, there's been a 44% improvement, I should say, in missed bin performance. Recycling rates have remained consistent, as have our street cleansing and street cleansing performance. I think where members will see the greatest improvement and the greatest benefit of this new contract is in the complaints, which are illustrated in the report, which have fallen dramatically under the new contractor, and have led to a significant reduction in the resource impacts or implications, I should say, on our customer services team and on the waste team. So that's been very welcome for officers. The charts at point 12 of the report illustrate the number of bins which we have missed per collection type. The way in which data in the waste is presented changes because of the partnership. We use a per 100,000 figure often to try and give equity across the partnership because we have different population sizes between Wealdon, Hastings and Rother. So it gives us a benchmark across the contract. What's presented here to you is the actual missed bins. So it's important to make that distinction for you. Now you'll see an emerging theme from the data before you on missed bins for domestic recycling and assisted collections, in that the missed bin performance was improving and there's a distinct improvement prior to COVID, but post-COVID there's been a significant impact on the missed bin performance. Really, and principally that's due to BIFA's struggling with recruitment and levels of staff sickness, for example, and also the need to use agency drivers who don't know the rounds particularly intimately. And that is something we've seen a great deal of improvement with in recent months, and BIFA have been really going great guns to improve that situation for us. And I've got some data today actually for the August performance, and that trend you can see, which is illustrated in the report between June and July, in terms of actual numbers, which is at point 14 of the report. We can see that I can tell you, I'll update you, but in August we've seen an improvement yet further still, and the domestic missed bins is at 121, recycling 105, and garden waste 89, and assisted down to 30. And overall, that crucial per 100,000 figure on which the contract is monitored, we're at 120 missed bins per 100,000, which is on the target albeit we want it to be below the target. But I think you'll agree that that is a marked improvement in recent months. And again, it's just testament to the challenges, legitimate challenges that BIFA have been experiencing, I think, due to the COVID-19 pandemic. Moving on, I pulled out garden waste for you separately, just because of the issues around that and the fact that we had a gap in April, where you'll notice in the main data actually that the improvement of missed bins generally in April. And that's due to the fact that there was no garden waste service, so resources were targeted and the roads were a lot clearer because of lockdown, which has a big impact on our missed bin performance when roads are blocked, or there are issues with roadworks and the like, etc. So yeah, similar picture under garden waste. Onto recycling for you. Just to update you, and many of you will be aware, there's a target of 50% of our overall waste to be recycled. As a UK government target, and we consistently reach and exceed that target. As I said at the outset, our performance has been comparable under BIFA. There are challenging figures to improve upon, really, while we have the level of dry mix recycling that we have presently. While that doesn't change, in terms of what we can recycle, the percentages are unlikely to increase significantly. We do see some variation year on year, but I'll come up in at the end of the report, I think, to illustrate to you some steps we're taking to try and improve that performance over the longer term. It's important to highlight that only acceptable items can be recycled, and there is an issue with contamination where waste is, particularly in urban areas principally, where there's lots of flats, etc., that waste can become contaminated. That can incur costs to us, which we haven't had to realise as yet to the county council that process the waste as well. So we haven't experienced that to date, but we do hover around the threshold of 10% contamination levels, which would make it very difficult for the contractor to sell that recycler on into the market. Moving on to street and beach cleansing, the independent surveys are carried out 3 times yearly, which is essentially someone going out and having a look at the streets and taking a sort of litmus test of what things look like on the ground. We've seen a consistent performance with previous contracts across detritus and litter and dog fouling. Dog fouling levels are relatively low. The litter performance and detritus performance isn't as low as I would like, but it is improving, and they are keeping it consistent during challenging times under COVID-19, again, where we've seen extremely high visitor numbers to our seaside locations, and particularly Bexhill and Camber, which have suffered as a result. I think the evidence is there for people to see. And again, BIFA have been in their approach to this, have been extremely engaged and effective with us, at working with us, which is contrary to the previous contractor, and they're work solutions focused and outcome focused, which is refreshing. Further to that, fly tipping has increased during May, June and July, just to update you, compared to last year, but has reduced significantly during August. And just to give you an illustration, we were a high point of about 128 clearances in June, and that's fallen to 89 clearances presently in August, which is a significant reduction and useful to see. We felt that it's felt from officers that the government changes to lockdown have increased fly tipping. Obviously, the waste recycling centres were closed as well during lockdown, which did have a slight impact. And it may be that we're seeing a longer term trend though in households using more cardboard as they get deliveries in through the door, and it increases the temptation for people to fly tip and not use at bring sites, for example, and as their household capacity, waste capacity, is exceeded. So we are keeping our eye on that, because we may be seeing a changing trend more generally. So we'll keep you updated on that, and keep, I should say, Councillor Prochak, and work closely with her on that as we move forward. So that's a sort of overview of what the report covers in detail. I didn't want to it's in the report, so I'm sure there'll be questions at the end. But in conclusion, the contract is performing well in comparison to the previous contract. There are still improvements to be made, of course. We're only 12 months in. The principal challenges with inheriting a staff team and culture under the previous contractor, which was less than perfect, is very challenging, and cultures take time to change. But BIFA have been improving things under those circumstances. And I think something that's not particularly easy to measure or to illustrate to you in figures is their approach and their ability and how effective they are at communication, and how effective and responsive they are to our needs, and flexible. So they're quite happy to move outside of the contract terms, etc. They're not pulling a contract out every 5 minutes and refusing to do things. They're working with us. It's not to say we don't have challenges, but they are working with us, and it feels very collaborative. And yeah, I think we're seeing the benefits of that. I mentioned earlier about next steps and what we're doing beyond these conversations strategically with the waste contract. And it's important to bring to members' attention, I think, the need to improve recycling rates. And I know that under the environment strategy that adopts that there is we need to get that as high as we possibly can. We're always caught in this paradox with informing or communicating to the public what they can and can't recycle, in that the people to whom we are sending, the people that are going to read recycling information and recycling leaflets are probably recycling perfectly well. It's not those that we want to reach, it's those that aren't recycling and don't have an inclination to recycle that we need to reach. So we are looking at ways of targeting those areas where the recycling rates are lower, and thinking about how we give that message across, and what other measures we might be able to put in place to improve that rate. Further to that, members may be aware that this environment bill is passing through Parliament at the moment, making its way through Parliament, and if adopted, and a part of that is food waste collections, which look more likely than not to be adopted as policy. I mean, there is a chance it won't be, of course, but that would mean that from 2023 there would be the duty potentially on the local authority to collect food waste. There's a lot of variables in there, and it's I don't want to get too bogged down in that, because there's not a lot more to tell you really than that at this stage. But suffice to say, the contract was written deliberately to allow food waste to be collected if it's needed. There would be possibly a cost to someone somewhere along the supply chain to delivery of that service locally, but it remains to be seen where those costs will fall. But it's just to put that on your radar, really, in the context of this report, because that will also go some way to improve recycling rates as well, obviously. So I'm going to go and turn my notifications off on my phone, which I think have been bleeping every time someone puts a comment on the thread. But I'm here to take questions for you, and yeah, over to you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I've got an echo. Don't like echoes. Anyway, Joe, the Camber Sands and obviously the beach cleaning, that might have been a bit of a baptism of fire for BIFA, given this season that it was sort of dead quiet and then totally manic.
Yeah, I mean, it was. I mean, to be in their defence, I think what's typically a sort of 5 or 6 days in a season phenomenon was every day, and it did take us all. It dominated my life for a couple of months, to be frank. And BIFA, I think, generally speaking, I think there is a weakness with the performance this first year. It is their ability to react to peaks and troughs in demand. And we're always at pains to explain to members that this is an outcome-based contract, and that there isn't going to be someone necessarily turning up every week to sweep the street as they would have done previously. They're going to go to where the street needs sweeping. But that cuts both ways, and I'm not sure that we're quite getting that across to BIFA at the moment. That okay, well, we're all up for an outcome-based contract, but that means when Camber gets slammed by 30,000 visitors or whatever, you need to have more resources in place, and it's not good enough to say you're coming at the same time you always come with the same crew you always use when there's 10,000 visitors. That doesn't quite cut it. So we are working with them. It's challenging for them to have that. I mean, it would be challenging for us to have any business, to deal with that peaks and troughs. That's why businesses don't really like that, do they? They like a constant, predictable flow. So they will struggle. I think anyone would struggle with it, but we're working with them, and they're round the table. We've got a special group for Camber with them They're there every week with our RADCOP meetings in the season, and then they're really engaged and effective. So I'm confident you'll see improvements going forward.
That's good. I've got a number of councillors wish to speak. I understand that Councillor Maynard needs to declare an interest as a member of East Sussex County Council, who is the disposal authority. Is that correct, Carl?
Yes, please, Chairman. As an executive member of East Sussex County Council, yes, we are the disposal authority, and in his introduction, Joe has obviously alluded to that. So yes, I'll declare a personal interest, please, and I'd like to speak as well. Thank you.
Yeah, I've got you down.
Chairman, then I think,
Chairman,
sorry, I think I need to declare as well, and in that case.
Okay.
As a
council.
Can you note, Chairman, all East Sussex County councillors need to declare an interest? I do.
Yeah. Okay. Have you got that, Louise?
Yes, I have. Thank you, Chairman.
Cool. Shall I go to Councillor Prochak if you're there? Do you wish to add anything at this stage?
Yes, that's kind of you, Chairman. Since taking on this responsibility, the portfolio holder for this, I have never come across such a complex, difficult service to deliver, and one that affects absolutely every resident in Rother, across Rother. A really, really high-profile service, and Joe has covered most of the big issues like contamination. The big thing that for recycling is that we do need some kind of education program. We are in charge of improving recycling, not the county council. We have nothing in the budget for this education if we wanted to do it. And the thing is that the contamination has been huge, actually, especially around the Bring sites, because when the recycling sites have been closed, people just have been dumping things around the Bring sites, and it's caused a huge problem. And of course, then we have the litter as well, with everybody having takeaway meals and in these cartons and dumping them. And Bexhill Seafront has suffered a lot from that kind of litter. I think councillors have learnt a lot from this, from their visits, and a number went to see Veolia. We've been to see Viridor, and we've seen how loads can become contaminated. It's extraordinary. People put in their recycling bins things like dirty nappies or pet bedding, food and garden waste and so on. And then we lose an income if a whole load is rejected. So that's something to bear in mind in terms of getting recycling higher. If we have to do food collection, which we might, then obviously we hope our recycling rates will go up. The other thing that I just wanted to add, Chairman, if I may, is that Joe said that his life was dominated by Camber for a few weeks, and I can tell you how hard our officers have had to work to actually keep on a daily to keep on top of this, and they did. And it's extraordinary, I think, the kind of stress levels that this engenders. If you can, you can imagine, and we know the kind of state Camber Beach was in. But then that spread to Pett, and Winchester Beach, and so on, and of course Bexhill. So I'd just like to pay tribute to our waste collection operatives, apart from the hiccup with the green garden waste. And that was understandable because the absenteeism from the workforce went to a limit where they couldn't sustain the rounds. They have actually carried on and collected our waste, as you've seen from the report. So I would like to pay tribute to our own officers, but also to BIFA operatives as well, for actually performing so well during the pandemic. So I think that's what I would like to add. And of course, if I can answer questions, and I have Joe also, if you want to have more technical questions. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I would echo that. Personally, I've not had a single missed bin, and nobody has contacted me from any of my patch to say they have either. So, so from that point of view, it's all good. I've got a number of councillors wishes to speak, so I'll put them in order. Chairman of Council first, Councillor Drayson.
I think it was Councillor Clark first, but I don't mind going ahead.
Go on then.
Okay, thank you. Just briefly, the reduced missed bins for recycling and the other things in April actually justify the decision to stop the garden waste. So thank you who made that decision. And again, thank you to the officers who decided not to impose the £5 increase. I know it's cost us more money, but it did actually stop some of the people in, we probably all got emails about it, and it did stop some of those complaints, although I was asked about the 16p for next year, but never mind. Page 23, Joe, it's a bit bleak, I think, thinking that increased online shopping is going to necessarily lead to fly tipping. I know you singled out cardboard, but of course that's one of the things we actually do recycle. So I'd like to be on the positive side there and think it won't increase fly tipping just because we're shopping online. But on the question of recycling, para 27 on big page 10, it seems grossly unfair that the paid garden waste service counts towards our target, or seems to count towards our target for recycling. Not everyone's going to pay for the garden waste. You might be thinking, good job it's there, otherwise we wouldn't get anywhere near our target. But it seems a little unfair that, like Sue Projak said, we should be educating, and not just the people who don't recycle. Even those who do recycle still need reminders about sandwich wrappers and black plastic and Tetra Packs. So I just think we need to, it's a bit unfair that garden waste, can you confirm that garden waste is included? And also let's go on this education for all to recycle. Thank you.
Yep, shall I come back,
Yes,
Chair?
please.
Yeah,
yes, please.
yeah, and I can confirm that the garden waste is included in the figures. I think that, but that's consistent across the country, and as is largely speaking, there are one or two exceptions, some quite close to us, where charging is not enforced. I mean, it is a challenge to educate the public, and different areas of the public, I think, are different area or different demographics have different levels of engagement with the recycling and environment agenda generally. The challenge, as you've described it, really is that, and as Councillor Projak alluded to, is that we don't have a allocated budget for that, and it is very expensive to write to every household before you've even paid for the producing whatever you send them, if you know what I mean. You're talking tens of thousands, and I'm not ruling out the need to do a blanket piece of communication and around that, you know, local advertising, etc. But it would seem that it might be more cost effective to just be honest about which areas are perform less well, and then target them with perhaps different forms of communication. These are just ideas, really. I think at this stage, it's just something I know, being on the current administration's agenda very heavily, the environment strategy, that it's important that we have some sort of illustrate to you that we are thinking about ways of improving that, and working with our partners to do so. So I hope that helps clarify. But that garden waste figure and the recycling figure is a pure output measure for this district, rather than, you know, whether that's paid through the general rates or through personal contributions.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I want to address the issue on page 5 of missed bins assisted, because I attended the very first meeting of the committee when the new contractor took over, and I specifically said I want to be sure that the previous contractor has given the new contractor the database, so we know people who have assisted collections will continue to have their bins collected. Because I do get a few complaints about that, and people with assisted collection, they, from various medical reasons, are unable to get their bin to the curtilage, and very often they have to get a letter from their doctor to confirm that. And I see there's a spike and it increased, and I just want us to be vigilant on that, because it's very important to people who have assisted collection that their bins collected. And also, I need to confirm I have a personal interest as a member of the Sussex County Council on this subject matter. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can you take that back, Joe, with the assisted bins?
Yeah, well, just to clarify, it is the same data, so that was transferred across with the new contractor. And the report it's a quirk of when it was written, because it has to be written so much ahead of time so that people can look at it. But just to reassure you, the August assisted number is 30. No. So relative to when it was inherited in July at 62, it's a 50% reduction and going down. So that is positive. But absolutely, it's a focus for us, Councillor Clark. That group, obviously. Thank you.
Good, thank you. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. And yeah, I'd like to associate myself with the comments made in terms of those people who throughout COVID, those frontline workers throughout COVID, obviously made sure that the bins were emptied. Obviously redeclare that personal interest. And I think we need to set this in a bit of historical context. Here we are, first year as part of a new contract, but the previous joint weights contract, I think, was actually a huge success. Yes, it had to be ended prematurely, and we did have issues with the contractor, but we need to look at the historical context, because quite frankly, and it doesn't matter what political persuasion you are, East Sussex as a county had one of the first joint waste contracts in the country, and the old joint waste contract. That was 4 councils working together effectively of every different variance of political colour. And the driving force behind that initial joint waste contract back in the mid-2000s was a man who's sitting in this meeting quite quietly and about to exit this council, and that is Tony Leonard. So I want to personally give our thanks to Tony Leonard for the huge amount of work that he did to get the original joint waste contract up and running. And I think newer members of the authority would do well to recognise the huge amount of work that went in then, and that paved the way for the current joint waste contract. This has saved the councils of East Sussex millions of pounds. This has delivered outstanding service to residents of East Sussex. Doesn't matter which district and borough they live, because this joint waste contract was a hugely difficult thing to put together in the first place. The new contract was quite a difficult and robust negotiating process, both in respect of the different variances of the respective constituents authorities, and indeed negotiating with the contractor. So, to get this contract up and running, yes, I want to associate myself with the thanks to the operatives, but to get this contract up and running, it is the senior officer teams of the respective authorities that we have to thank, the Joint Waste Authority, but the brains behind the original joint waste contract was Tony Leonard, and I want to give my personal thanks to him, and I'm sure other councillors will want to be associated with those comments. The 3 specific issues I want to discuss. Firstly, in terms of communicating with residents about the environmental agenda, let's be brutally honest about this. The environmental agenda in terms of this joint waste contract has been something that we've been pushing across all the authorities of East Sussex for around about a decade. It's not a new thing to think in an environmental fashion. And, it isn't a political comment when I say now that I think that we have an opportunity, as I've said many times before, when we get that annual communication out to residents, when we send in their council tax demand, to congratulate them on the excellent recycling levels that they've put forward, but and continuing to do, but also to remind residents of their responsibilities in terms of continued recycling and how we want to be even better in the future. I want to just focus in though on this issue around contamination, and Joe's alluded to the fact that it is urban centric. And I want to ask specifically in terms of, we've talked about bring sites, etc., but in terms of collecting from the doorstep, what sort of investigation is being done to find out exactly where across the joint waste contract that is happening, and are we focused on that? Because the previous councillors have spoken are quite right to say that it is a serious matter if indeed we end up getting loads rejected. So I want to understand how we look at that contamination, which leads me neatly on to the next point, which has already been alluded to, around fly tipping. And yes, there may have been an increase in fly tipping throughout, but what I would like is an assurance from Joe that the officer team, and I remember it was one of Mick Adams' absolute passions as an ex-copper, he wanted to make sure that if we can investigate fly tips and prosecute them successfully, that we could actually reduce fly tipping by informing the public when we have successful prosecutions. So what I want to hear is that we are actually investigating fly tips, because as a previous councillor has already said, I don't think really it's about cardboard. It's quite often about contractors that perhaps aren't registered, that have come round to cut down Mrs. Miggins' conifers and they've left them at the end of the lane. And this sort of thing does happen. So what I want is an assurance on both of those counts, where we're looking at contamination, where we're looking at fly tipping, that we've got the wherewithal and resource to actually investigate those fly tips properly and prosecute them where we can. Thank you, Chairman.
Joe, can I put that back to you then?
Yes, certainly. Thank you, Councillor Maynard. The contamination, just to try and describe that for you, it's not, my personal view is it's not precise enough. It's calculated at the end of the supply chain, essentially, when it ends up with the county contractor. That's when it's looked at in its totality. I think it's anecdotal. Is the from the contractor is that that trend I mentioned about it being urban centre, when they tip the loads into from each round, when they tip those loads, they get sight of those as well. But I think it's a fair point. I think more needs to be done to try and be a bit more precise about the whereabouts of those, to be really pinpoint where those contamination is happening, and it's something that could be improved. Secondly, regards fly tips, just to assure you, we do have two officers, dedicated officers, dedicated to the enforcement of this contract and the monitoring of this contract, in Dave Carter and Mike, who work, one dedicated to Bexhill, one dedicated to rural areas, and they are tasked with focusing on enforcement. It's notoriously challenging to you essentially have to catch people red-handed in most cases. As you've said, it can be nondescript sort of fly tips. Where fly tips have people's personal letters in and things, it's easier. But most, as Councillor Maynard alluded to, a lot of this is professional people who are know what they're doing, and they're not going to put anything there that's associated with them directly. So it is notoriously challenging, but not impossible. And we are, those officers will remain, and we do have some success. A lot of it we deal with, in terms of advice and firm words with people. We do catch, but it's very challenging, notoriously challenging across council enforcement to attempt to elicit key information from offenders, be it people using their jet skis on, I come back to you frequently on various elements of bylaw and enforcement, which highlight how challenging it can be when we're not don't have a police uniform on, to put it bluntly, to elicit that sort of information. But we're doing everything we can as far as our powers extend. I hope that's helpful.
Thank you. Councillor Prochak, you say you can add to the conversation there.
Yes, it's contamination. When we visited Viridor, we actually saw loads being unloaded and tipped and ready for sorting for recycling. Our operatives here who take their loads to Pebsham are supposed to do a visual check to see if it looks contaminated, and I think they can tell quite quickly. But when they get to Crayford, what they do is they actually sample. I think it's something like 10% of loads they sample them. And we went into a special area where they actually sort that load into things that can be recycled and things that can't be recycled. And they know where that load has come from. So there are those kind of checks. And it was interesting watching these operatives in the recycling plant actually showing, because they have different bins of things that can, things that can't. And then they make a very careful record of it. It was quite interesting to watch that. And that, so far, I think those are the only ways that we can check. The other thing about contamination is our bring sites, which actually, you know, are very difficult to maintain as non-contaminated, because people can put all sorts of things in there and we can't control it. I thought that might be helpful, Chairman.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. And I think also you may have missed Councillor Bayliss's name earlier on. I think it may have
No,
slipped
I've got
by
her
you.
down. She's not a member of the committee.
Well, neither am I. I'm a substitute.
No,
yeah.
but you know what I mean.
But thanks very much. Anyway, I'd like to echo Councillor Maynard's comments about Dr. Leonard. I think everyone on the council is sort of very grateful for his work, not just in this area but in many areas. And I'm sure I speak for everyone, whatever political colour. Also, thank you to Joe for this report and to the staff, and both in team and from the contractors, who I know have worked very hard during this pandemic. It's been very difficult for everyone, obviously, and I'm glad that we've got such a great team to look after our waste. Two main issues which seem to be coming up in Sidley at the moment, and I'm sure Councillor Carroll will sort of echo this as well. Firstly, in terms of missed bins, there seems to be an issue where when a car blocks an access point to maybe a block of flats or to a series of properties, that the entirety of all their bins doesn't get collected because the van can't get down there. And I'm hopeful that the parking enforcement, when that comes in, might help with that in terms of stopping people from parking where they shouldn't. But I don't know if there's any solutions we or our contractors can see to that in the future. And the other one, of course, in terms of fly tipping, is there is a lot of fly tipping going on, especially down areas like Watermill Lane and Buckout Lane, where there isn't much traffic. Again, when the development happens that's going to be happening there, hopefully that will make it more populated and less sort of friendly to fly tippers. But I'm not sure, as well as sort of just prosecuting them when we find them, what we can do in terms of deterrence to try and stop people from fly tipping in particular areas, because that seems to be a real hotspot. I don't know if Joe has comments to that.
Joe, anything you can
Yeah,
add to that?
thank you, Councillor Coleman. Just to to reiterate that your description of what can happen with cars blocking roads, or access to buildings is accurate. It's notoriously difficult. I think that the on-street charging particularly may make a difference, and the double yellow line enforcement may make a difference to that. So it's something to look at as CPE is enforced and rolled out. With regards to fly tipping, again, it's notoriously challenging. It's constantly under review. We're constantly, it's notoriously challenging across the country. We're reviewing it all the time, and the rates is the important thing that we're focused on. I'm heartened to see it coming down from where it was over the summer under the COVID challenges that we faced, but it is difficult. I think the charging in being introduced by the county in our recycling centres, we haven't seen an impact of that as yet. So we need to keep our eye on, the rationale being if people are charged that they may be more inclined to fly tip. Not seeing any significant indication of that at the moment, but that as part of that work, we are with Wealdon and Hastings keeping our eye on it as closely as we can.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I'd like to welcome the reduction in complaints, which is absolutely massive, from 83 a year ago in July 19 to just 11 in June 20. And that reflects the underlying improvement in the collection rate with the new contract. I'd like to pay tribute to BIFA collectors for seeing us through the pandemic, and as well to their management
and to Rother council officers overseeing the contract. On detail, I'd like to again pay tribute to the great response in terms of increased bins on the Bexhill seafront. And that is, as Mr. Powell has quite rightly pointed out, the result of an outcome-based contract. There was a serious problem. It was responded to. In one of my residential streets, there was a complete street or section of a street that was missed on a Saturday. And that wasn't due to a problem by Biffa. It was due to poor parking. The collection lorry couldn't get in. And that will of course be addressed by CPE, but what was impressive was that at 7 a.m. on Sunday morning the collection was completed. Yes, there are still problems. There are problems in Bexhill Town Centre with regards to with flats above shops that don't have the opportunity to have bins and have to put out black sacks. And there's a discussion over whether they should be seagull proof, whether they should be double sacks, whether there should be fixed bins, etc., which I think is a discussion to be held on the Bexhill Town Forum Steering Group in a couple of weeks' time. The other area where I'd like to make a suggestion is concerning recycling. Possibly it might be useful to target the freeholders of blocks of flats as which might result in a significant potential improvement in recycling. I noticed the Leader of the Opposition is shaking his head to that, which is what I would expect. What I'm trying to say is that if I take my block of flats as an example, we have, there are 13 flats, there are 13 refuse bins, but there are only 6 recycle bins. Now, under Rother's policy, we could have 7 more recycle bins. It's just a matter of persuasion to add the additional recycle bins and make some adjustments here and there, and that could quite significantly increase the overall recycling potential.
Thank you. Councillor Bayliss, you've been patient, if you're there.
Yes, I'm still here. Okay, thank you very much. And yes, I'd like to say thank you to Joe and the team and to the Biffa contractors. Certainly have responded to some of the sorts of complaints that we've raised, especially earlier on in the summer when we get those very short nights or long days. We do get a lot of problems with seagulls attacking litter bins, and it has been a big improvement to see them putting in bigger bins with right the way along the seafront. Councillor Cortell alluded to the town centre steering group, which is due to meet at the end of September, and one of the things that as I say, the strategy for the town centre steering group is around a new vision around Bexhill being a great place to live, work and relax. And in terms of living, there are issues around refuge, especially for those people who live in the flats. And I think it was a year ago, and possibly it might have been 2 years ago, but I think it was a year ago, we introduced a daily collection for people who live in flats. So instead of having a weekly or a fortnightly collection, which saw a sort of big increase in sort of bags of rubbish piled up in Western Road and St Anna's Road, we now have daily collections. But the rules on our daily collections are very clear about putting the bins out in the morning. And there is some debate about whether this has been a success or not, because if I went along Sackville Road this evening after dark, I would find that there are a number of black bags put out the night before instead of in the morning. And of course, if you do that in May, June and July, when you've got sunrise at 4 o'clock, by the time the actual refuse collectors come along at 7:30, litter is spread right across the road. And it's not nice for the Biffa contractors that they've got to sort of clear all this up. I mean, they do leave it immaculate, you know, after they've been along, but it must make the job a lot more difficult. One of the other sort of interesting things about COVID was that obviously there was a lot more takeaways eaten, and I sort of gave this a bit of thought about why we were getting so much rubbish on the seafront, especially when it was very hot, and again we had long days. And when you looked at our bins, they were full of takeaway boxes which haven't been collapsed. And there's two things I think we can think about in terms of addressing that. First of all, these are cardboard, so they're recyclable. And secondly, we could, you know, run a campaign to get people to collapse their takeaway boxes so that we can get more into the bins. I just don't think it's a good enough solution to, not to run a sort of strategy or a program to try and address this, because it is really noticeable on those hot, long summer days and definitely hot days that our bins are absolutely overflowing 8 or 9 o'clock at night. So the town centre steering group, which is meeting at the end of September, I think we will want to maybe have a short item on this and then talk about how we might address this over the autumn. I've talked to the takeaway owners. They're happy to get involved in a discussion about how we deal with the litter from takeaways. And then hopefully for next summer, we can address some of these sorts of issues and get less complaints about litter on the seafront. That's it.
Thank you. Tony, you sat there quiet, and this was, as Carl mentioned, a big part of what you did here. Anything you wish to say?
No, I think most items have been covered. I think, as members will know, I'm the lead director over the contract, so I also understand what's going on in Wilden and Hastings. And I believe that the majority of the contamination issues are emanating from Hastings, from the urban sort of HMO centres and things like that. That doesn't mean to say it's not happening elsewhere around the contract, but it's not to the same degree on that side. Biffa came in, as we know, the outgoing contract was distressed, but that was primarily caused by the change in the recycling world at that time, rather than actually through the contract. They didn't start well. They got settled in, but then the recycling market collapsed, and we've had to change considerably how we've dealt with that through the disposal routes as well. Overall, across Wilden, Hastings and Rother, the view is that Biffa are performing well. They're certainly improving. They came in with a view of doing improvements to the contract, but not long after COVID has sort of settled in, and actually they've coped very well through COVID. I know there's a bit of a period when the garden waste was disturbed, but they responded very well indeed to that. It's settling down to some normality now, and as Joe said, I think that the next period is really looking at the recycling rates, reducing the contamination within the collections, and then making sure Biffa within the next 6 to 8 months have met all their performance within the contract to see us through to the next sort of period of the contract. So across the three authorities, there is a real sort of view that Biffa have actually settled in very well indeed.
Good, thank you. Councillor Cook, you wish to move that the report be noted?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I would. With my thanks to Joe for this excellent.
You've deleted yourself, Councillor. You need to.
Sticks.
There you go.
Okay. Sorry, I'll start again. Yes, I would like to propose that this report is noted with our thanks to Joe and our request that you would pass on to members of the BIFA staff our various comments and positive thoughts, and thanks to them for their diligence during this particular pandemic. Just one comment I'd really like to make. Traditionally, Battle has a great group of people who go around with litter pickers, picking up detritus in the street. And obviously this has not been possible during this pandemic in the earlier days. But also Battle Town Council is introducing dual purpose closed litter bins. So one side is for litter and one side is for recycling. So that's something that Bexhill Town Centre Strategy Group might like to think about as well. But other than that, yes, please, I would like to propose that this report is noted.
Thank you. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Cortell, thank you very much. Don't need a vote on this, do we, Louise? Just an all in favour?
Yeah, that's correct. No need to take a
A
vote
nod?
as it's a noting. Yep.
Yeah, I'll put that down as some nods then. I've got some nods. Okay, thank you. Moving on, item 6, performance report, first quarter. I've got down Ben, but I don't think Ben's here.
No, Chairman. Ben has sent his apologies. He's actually taking this week off. He's exhausted from all the reports he's presented to the Cabinet and the other meetings. So, so I'll be taking this report. I'm going to dash through this one because in reality, this report is, I wouldn't say meaningless, but it's quite difficult to sort of gauge anything against about performance because of the period that we've been through and the quarter that it's looking at. The performance indicators are based on 4 themes: housing and homelessness, waste and recycling, and asset income and other income as the key things set by members to look at. But I will sort of take you straight to paragraph 7. Which basically said that for the moment we started looking at these indicators, COVID came into place, we had lockdown, and that none of these indicators have been severely affected by the impact of COVID. So I think at the moment, looking at the indicators tonight, some of you could say, I wouldn't say are meaningless, but they're difficult to interpret. And I think we're probably better off leaving this to the second quarter and then having a good discussion on the second quarter to see how we recovered performance during that period and what the impact is likely to look at the end of the year in terms of our performance indicators. Because at this moment in time, I think we'll be best guessing against this period. Happy to take any questions, though, Chairman. But the one thing I will say is that I recommend that we don't change the KPIs at the moment. We keep them the same and see how we get through to the second quarter. But happy to take any questions.
Yeah. Okay, I agree with that. It's not all bad news. There's 2 little ticks on there with green ticks. So weeks in temporary accommodation and investment return. So yeah, we got somewhere. Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to briefly talk about 3 areas. First of all, housing and homelessness. And I'd like to congratulate the housing team on how it's handled the prevention of homelessness, and as well as the excellent work of the Rother Finder Service. And we cannot overlook the fact that every rough sleeper apart from one in Rother was found accommodation, and they continue to be in accommodation with the exception of one other individual who's got considerable mental health problems and possibly needs additional support. Moving on to recycling, I'm concerned about paragraph 6 in the, sorry, I'm just turning the pages to it. I apologise for the delay. In the in the waste and recycling section, paragraph 6, it says, we understand from BIFA that during this period, a huge turnover rate in drivers has resulted in training drivers on unfamiliar rounds. It continues to say there was a problem with employee turnover. Now, what I'd like to know, Dr. Leonard, is did BIFA find some of the team taken over from the previous contractor unacceptable and either dismiss them or lean on them so hard that they had to leave, or was it a problem with COVID?
You're muted, Tony.
My apologies. I hope you heard all that.
Yeah, moving on.
The contract when was taken over by BIFA from Kier, 2P rules applied. So we inherited all the staff that 2P transferred across to BIFA. There were a number of areas where there have been long-standing sickness absence, which they've been dealing with and still are dealing with in some cases. There were some performance-related issues, which they have dealt with through the normal procedure of performance management. There are other issues where COVID impacted on that as well, where there was a sickness levels where drivers were, they may have not got COVID, but they had sort of trace of COVID and then had to take the 14 days off, which led to that. Furthermore, there is a national shortage of HGV drivers within this industry, and BIFA have come on the basis of looking to train staff within their own fleet of staff at the moment to actually give them some form of career progression through the organisation. But there were occasions, principally around those three areas I've said, is around performance, around inheritance of sickness absence, and around a shortage of drivers that caused the problem, and the COVID then exacerbated that at that time.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Dr. Leonard. If I could move to my next point, which is about car park income on page 29, Appendix D. It says Camber Western Car Park saw its second highest income taken in 1 month during the last 5 years of 76,600, etc. My question, which I wrote to Mr. Hook this afternoon at 2:45, but obviously he never saw it, was what was the total income for the Camber Park car parks in the last financial year? And if you're able to give me an answer to that, I'll move on to my next proposal.
Chairman, I'm not able to give an answer to that. Tony Baden may be able to, or Joe Powell, but I think it's one of those we may have to get that to you in writing later, because it's something which we'd need to look up.
Okay, thank you. My thinking on this was that we saw in your executive director's report that one of the Camber car parks had filled up by 9 a.m. on more than one day at the peak of the lifting of the pandemic, or rather when day trippers were allowed to travel for significant distances for the first time. My thinking is what we wouldn't be impacting on local people by significantly putting up the price of parking in the car parks in Camber. We'd be impacting presumably on day trippers from London, who could probably factor that into the price of their trip, and would probably still have a full car park if we increase the cost by 50%, which would increase the income from this council and contribute towards our deficit. so as not to alarm the local member who represents Canberra, I wonder whether there could be a two-scale pricing, one for local people with a local residence and another for day trippers from far away.
Yeah, fees and charges reviewed annually, so it could be considered then. But I noticed Malcolm and Joe wish to interject, Chairman.
Yeah, I've also got Tony. I'll bring Tony in first. He can give a partial answer to the income, I believe. Tony.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. For Q1, I can say that the car park income period, the total car park income between April and June was down by about £211,000 on last year. I don't have the total income for the whole financial year to hand. I think that's what Councillor Cortell was asking. But to provide some sort of comparison period on period, if you like, that may help members. And I can also say that for the period April to August, that 211,000 has increased slightly to 247,000.
Could that perhaps be borne in mind, Mr. Chairman, during the budgeting period, that perhaps that's one area which might be price inelastic, and where there could be reasonable scope for increasing revenue?
It could well be, but I would say that if you had two scales that said local scale 1 and the next scale if you're from far away, everybody who's just driven from London and say they came from Rye. Pretty simple as that. And if they didn't, they would just park in someone's front garden. I can tell you that for nothing. I think, Tony, did you want to come back again?
Malcolm wanted to interject.
Yeah, I'll see that as well. Yeah. All right, I've got Malcolm.
Yeah, Chairman, thank you very much. Just to say that pricing will be considered by members later in the year, early next year for pricing. I would remind members that we cannot give any reductions we give cannot be local unless you mean local is all of Rother. That is the reduction that we would have to give, because we cannot give a reduction to, e.g., anybody who lives in Eastern Rother or something like that. But members will get the opportunity to look at pricing later in the year, like I said, early next year when it comes up before them.
Yeah, does that answer your question a bit there, Councillor Cortell?
It does, thank you.
Thank you. Joe, you wish to come back as well?
No, you'll see on the time signature, I just pressed at the same time Malcolm did. Great minds.
Cool. And Tony, are you covered as well?
Just to quickly pick up on Councillor Cortell's point about budgeting, Chair, we will take into account demand. Budgets are a very simple formula, and in a way it's price times volume. So as well as price, we will take into account volume. We will be doing that for every single income line that's been particularly been affected by COVID, as we're aware that the impact in many cases will probably stretch beyond 2020/21 financial year.
Yep. Okay, good. I've got Councillor Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. I've got a number of points, but I can't resist. If we are going to think about Canberra, we need to be conscious of how one would police a two-tier system. You've hinted at the problems. I also have to say that our experience with commuter parking is that if the charges are too high, and they usually are, then commuters are very ingenious in finding all kinds of other places to park to the detriment of residents in certainly my village and other main station villages. I can't help feeling that the village of Canberra would suffer greatly if we get it wrong. That said, I'm happy that we're looking at that income. I not altogether clear that what we can use car parking for and what the prohibitions are. But no doubt somebody will actually enlighten me on that. The other area I wanted to look at a little is paragraphs 15, 16, 17, 18. We're obviously dealing with a highly artificial situation in terms of movement of tenants at the moment. I'm not quite clear when the prohibition on eviction came in, but I couldn't quite follow the logic in paragraph 15, how we are so sure the trend is worse. But it would depend really on whether people are being evicted or not. Certainly, there can't be a great deal of movement at the moment because tenants simply are unable to move, even if they want to. I know of one or two who have. And that makes me wonder why, in fact, more social housing tenancies are becoming available at present, as listed in paragraph 18, and why we think that trend might reverse suddenly. I can't quite understand where the vacancies are coming from and why the vacancies should suddenly get worse.
Who wants to try and take that?
I might come in on the housing point, if that's helpful, Chairman.
Joe,
I'm going to assume Councillor Osborne wants me to continue. I think the screen's frozen. Just with regards to the report at paragraph 18, I think it is, where it talks about the impact of social housing. That's trying to describe the immediate effect on social housing under the pandemic was that our registered providers were not able to at all provide us with accommodation. They weren't turning any tenancies around, and there was a backlog of voids that were pre-existing prior to COVID. As the restrictions eased, the registered providers began latterly in a sort of June, July time to again open their voids up, do the sign-ups, get contractors in to check the gas and all the things they need to do before people move in. So that's what that's trying to describe, is that very immediate short-term impact on the social housing availability, and then the immediate period post that time, if that helps. Councillor Barnes, and I'll let Malcolm come back on the car park.
That certainly helps. Actually, we're presumably now worried about evictions after Christmas because we seem to be prolonging the eviction ban, and nobody's going to be evicted over Christmas. Do I understand that correctly?
That's correct. I mean, we have had an extension. Well, it's like most things, there's a bit of a nuance to it. That the evictions have been prohibited until March 21. There are some exceptions with regards to people who are perpetrating significant forms of antisocial behaviour or have 6-month rent arrears, but it's an emerging picture that is extremely complex. We're working closely with the Brighton Housing Trust, who are legal specialists in this area, and are keeping us appraised of the emerging, literally at the moment, I'm getting emails daily, emerging court application forms that landlords are going to be required to produce. So it's a very much a reasonably, perhaps, on the hoof sort of piece of legislation that's being put in to try and protect tenants in these circumstances. But obviously there's a risk of illegal eviction, or unlawful eviction, perhaps more accurately, and there's also the challenge of that we're experiencing, as you described quite well, I think, of this sort of build-up of evictions that may come at a cliff edge whenever that's arrived at the moment, March 2021. But watch this space, I think, at this stage.
Thank you.
With that, can I just, before you go to Malcolm, Chairman, can I just say congratulations to the officers on there are two types of homeless people, but the rough sleepers are the ones which we seem to have done a magnificent job during this epidemic, and I think we ought to recognise what a terrific job our officers have done about the rough sleepers. The homeless are a slightly different problem from rough sleepers because they're not used to coping on the streets.
Yeah, I agree with that. Malcolm.
Yeah, thank you, Chairman. Just to go back to the point about car park income, just again to remind members that car park income exists to maintain car parks, and that's what we use it for. And actually, if we don't charge in a car park, then all of the people of Rother, or all the taxpayers of Rother, are paying for that car park. So we take our car park account as a totality. So although people look at Canberra and say that's an awful lot of cars, that's an awful lot of money, it does fund car parking throughout the district. And the legislation is quite clear on that. We use car park income to fund car parks, which is getting vehicles off the roads to keep the roads flowing clearly. So I hope that clarifies that point, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you. Before anybody jumps up and down, we spent a ton of money down Canberra cleaning up the beach after they've all gone home. Eleanor, you've been very patient.
Yeah, sorry, Chairman. I'm probably coming in a bit late now because it's taken me a while to speak. I was only going to completely support Councillor Cortell's comments about car parking. I know this is something I've raised since I've been elected. I really do think we're missing a trick with not having a two-tier parking charges. It's quite easy to do because I know in Bath, I don't know whether they do it currently, but they used to do it. If you're a council tax payer, you got, with your council tax, once you paid it, you got a disc thing that you put in your car. So then you sort of charge tourists obviously a lot more. I still think that actually the charges are quite reasonable in Canberra. If people come down for the whole day, which they have been doing 7-8 hours, they're not spending any other money. They're bringing their barbecues and their picnics, etc. So I think we should be looking at charging them more, and that local people should be paying less. And I think we should look at different councils that do it, because there are definitely ways of doing it. And in Battle as well. I think in Battle, you know, why aren't we charging tourists more and actually making it cheaper for local residents? So I would just say I think we should definitely be looking at that when we start looking at the charges. And as I say, I've raised it for the last 5 or 6 years, but it's not got anywhere. So, Councillor Cortell, I entirely agree with you.
There you go. Who says there's never consensus? Councillor Dixon, you're the portfolio holder. Anything you wish to add?
No, thank you, Chairman. Nothing to add. I think Tony's covered it all. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Can I have Councillor Cook? Do you wish to move that this be resolved?
Perfectly happy to do so, Chair.
Thank you.
Chairman, as there's no comments going up to Cabinet, then it's really just a report for noting then.
Yeah, okay. Seconder for that? Do I need a seconder? So look at somebody. Councillor Cortell's put his hand up, so he's a seconder. So if everybody has a nod to say we're in agreement, that's good. Thank you very much. Item 7, tourism events funding.
Yes, Chairman, if you don't mind me presenting this report again in Ben's absence. Just very quickly, I'll run through the report. Councillor Dixon is on scrutiny, or in the scrutiny meeting tonight. He was chairman of the Tourism Task and Finish Group last year that led to the policy for the events budget. So he may have some comments on this as we go through this report. So the intention of the Task and Finish Group last year was to consolidate the visitor events funding, and out of that came an events budget. There was 9,000 originally to Bexhill, 9,000 to Rye, 9,000 to Battle allocated to the Freetown to do some marketing and promotion. The Tourism Task and Finish Group felt that should be more focused on events because they felt that actually drew people in, and then it was down to the businesses to do the marketing themselves. The current policy under paragraph 3 sets out how that event funding was going to be managed, and that is that the policy as we currently operate. The impact of COVID, however, has had a significant impact on events this year. In fact, it's decimated the industry right across the country. Events aren't happening at all, and a number of event organisers and companies have gone to the wall during that period. So we really are looking at probably events taking place next year and not this year. As a consequence of that, there has been an underspend in this budget, and this report has come forward with the request of the well, it was on the agenda in any case, but also requested the portfolio holder to look at it, particularly under the Bexhill marketing approach. If I can just turn to paragraphs 8, 9 and up to 12 as well, it just takes you through what the current position is. Battle itself receives £9,000 and they continue to do their own tourism marketing, and they wish that to continue at the time of the tourism task and finish group sort of considerations, and that was supported by members, and that continues to this day. So they've had that £9,000 coming in. Through Battle and Rye, the events were run as events, and now that Battle, that money hasn't been spent, and Bexhill wished to see the money being allocated to an organisation similar to what Battle have set up, where they have a marketing group that then uses that money to actually help promote marketing, not just events, but overall tourism marketing. And the terms of reference are set out in Appendix A. As for Rye, Rye used to run the events budget, but never spent it in its fullness, and actually handed back that responsibility to Rother during the period of the tourism task and finish group. And the policy on that will continue if members agree. But as the money hasn't been spent this year, there's been a request from the Rye Bay Marketing Limited that money is passed to them to help them fund their tourism guide for this year, and then revert back to the events programme for next year. I do add options in paragraph 15 that, knowing the council's financial position at the moment, that members may wish to see that money being put into the budget to actually help reduce the drawn reserves. But alternatively, it could be spent in the way that the recommendations is being set out at the moment. If we do go down the route supporting what is recommendation 2, which is allocate the £9,000 for the Bexhill Marketing Group to the marketing and promotion of Bexhill, then we need to be mindful that we will have to amend the policy as set out in paragraph 3 for that, and that will then only apply to Rye in the future. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
Okie dokie. I understand Councillor Dixon needs to declare an interest.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Just as I am a member of the Battle Marketing Group, as it's been mentioned. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I have received an email today, but I'll let Councillor Gray, who's indicated, come in, and I'm sure she'll mention it.
Thank you, Chair. I'm lucky enough to be the councillor for Bexhill Old Town, and I would like to request that Bexhill Old Town is specifically mentioned in the Appendix A. Bexhill Old Town is the historic heart of Bexhill. The Old Town Preservation Society raise funds to keep the Old Town looking beautiful with hanging baskets and Christmas decorations. They provide events at Christmas and May Day. And I would specifically ask them to be mentioned in Appendix A under Scope, where in the first bullet point, where it says Little Common, Sidley, Bexhill. I would please ask that you add Old Town, Bexhill Old Town. And then at the bottom of the page, permanent membership. I would ask if you could add Bexhill Old Town Preservation Society to the list there. Thank you.
Okay. Seems perfectly reasonable to me. Councillor Madeley, I'm sure you're probably going to echo that.
I do, sir, but I'm asking whether I can, as I'm now a guest and not a substitute.
Well, you can speak.
I
I'm
can.
sure someone else has seconded it for you.
I'm very, very happy to second that, and I have nothing to add to what Councillor Gray has said. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Barnes.
Chairman, I'm chary about this. We've just had a tourism workforce we're going to review what they were doing later on this autumn. And yet we're tearing up the policy as far as Bexhill is concerned. It seems to me a slightly odd thing to do, and I'd like to see a little more rationale before I really could accept this. Clearly, individual places do some marketing of their own. Burwash does, for example, but most of our marketing is done through the 1066 marketing policy. And in many ways, what we want our visitors to do is once they're here, we want them to go around the whole area. So that if somebody comes to Burwash, I would want them to go on to Battle and to Bexhill. And I'd like to create tourist trails so that you actually maximize the impact of attracting your tourists. What the tourism workforce decided was that you did need to pump prime events in particular. And it's not so much allocating the money to Bexhill to a group to spend, it's what they propose to spend it on. It seems to me at the moment that we shouldn't rip up the Tourism Task Force report, that having some very good reasons for doing so.
Okay. Councillor Stevens, you've indicated you wish to speak, I'm sure, about Rye.
Yes, hello, thank you, Chair. Yeah, I'm not very happy with this report, actually. If you look at the background, number 2, the allocated events budget was specifically to be used for pump priming new visitor events and help with start-up costs and help existing visitor events with financial support. Now, in Rye, as you know, we have loads of tourists, just like Bexhill and Battle, and we've got our own little group called the Rye Events Group, which I'd like to continue with. And last year, we did have lots of people, lots of events that we'd actually granted. So the money had been spent. It was just put on hold because of COVID-19. I think we should honour them events so they can do bigger and better next year. And you know, Rye wants to carry on looking after their own money. We don't want it to be under one umbrella. I mean, I think Bexhill should have their 9, Battle should have their, and Rye should have their. You know, and it's worked so well for the last 2 years. I don't know why we need to put it all under one umbrella.
Okay, would I be right in thinking, Tony, that say in the position of Rye, last year, well, this year's money wasn't spent, so that is then available for them to spend next year, and the money that they would have had next year goes towards the Rye Bay Marketing Group as a one-off. Yeah. Is that the way I'm reading it or wrong?
No, Chair, but the way it's being proposed at the moment is that there's been no spend on events this year at Battle or Rye because they were all postponed. Yeah. So there is technically £18,000 left in the budget. Now that budget could just go back into the reserves and to meet the underspend or the overspend this year on the budget. That's one point. The second thing is that Rye has said that they're not going to be spending their events budget this year because there are no events, and there's been an approach by the Rye Bay Marketing Limited to say, could we have that money to fund their marketing brochure? Now, that's a decision for members whether they wish to do that or not. We've not supported it in the past in that way because it's been funded through the commercial sector, and what the council have done is promoted events to help them fill their bed spaces and bring people into the town to spend their money. That's the purpose of the events programme. So that's a decision for members whether they wish to do that. They can either keep that, roll that money forward into next year and have 18,000 if they wish to do so, 9 plus 9, or they can actually allow Rye Bay Marketing that, or they can just let the money go back into the reserves pot. As for Bexhill, they specifically asked that they, because of the events haven't gone ahead this year, that they wish to set up a Bexhill marketing group similar to Battle, which, as Councillor Barnes said, goes in contravention of the previous policy agreed by the Tourism Task and Finish Group, was about getting events, drawing people into town, and allowing the businesses then to feed off the events and people coming into that basis. So it is a change in direction. The portfolio holder for culture, communities, culture and tourism asked that Bexhill specifically be treated in that way. And it's for Scrutiny to have a look at as to whether they wish to change that policy from the previous Task and Finish Group or not. It may be helpful to hear from the chairman of the who was chairing the Task and Finish Group to see that, to ensure that I have actually understood that all correctly.
Okay, well, I'll take Councillor Earl Williams at the moment. Deirdre, are you there?
Well, actually, yes, I am here. I think it would be helpful to hear the previous chairman, what he has to say before I speak.
Okay.
If I may.
Yeah, Kevin, over to you.
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, it is correct that the Task and Finish Group did come up with events as being the key to the success, but obviously that was before COVID, and I think that's probably changed a lot of things with no events going on. I mean, in the case of Battle, we are marketing still, even though there are no events. We're marketing the town through social media and other areas, including train stations still with South Eastern. So there is a role for marketing. Is there a role for events this year? Probably not. I mean, it's up to really this committee to make some sort of suggestions to Cabinet. It hasn't come to Cabinet and Cabinet hasn't discussed this yet. So we're really open to suggestions. With one hat on, I'll be quite happy to take the money, put it against the deficit with my finance hat on, but with my tourism hat on, this money needs to be spent to get our number one industry going, which is tourism. So I think that is very important that we do actually spend this money, but don't spend it for spending's sake. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Back to you then, Deirdre.
Well, actually, one of my questions has been answered. I just really had a bit of a comment about the proposed marketing group for Bexhill, in as much as that I see that the people that will be consulted and have somebody represented are very much the same old people that we always had. We've had so many of these kind of groups before, going back for years, and it's never really amounted to anything, and I just would love to have seen some fresh blood. Thank you.
Okie dokie. Councillor Cortell, you indicated.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, I agree with Councillor Dixon wearing his tourism hat that we need to spend this money in order to grow our number one industry. And if we don't set up a Bexhill marketing group, then there's an imbalance of power where Battle are able to use their existing organisation to promote their group. So are Rye and Bexhill, without its town council, without its marketing group, is left as the poor relation. And I think we need a more even playing field within the three towns. And yes, I would support Councillor Stevens' argument that the 9,000 be spent in Rye this year to promote Rye, and I would also like to see the setting up of the Bexhill marketing group to promote Bexhill.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Coleman.
Thank you, Chair. Perhaps unsurprisingly, I just wanted to say how delighted I am to see Sidley mentioned in this report. We have a lot of things on offer for tourists, and I'm excited to see what marketing strategies can be deployed for Sidley. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Councillor Timber, you're the portfolio holder. Anything you wish to add?
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, thank you, Chair. Yeah, it's interesting to hear all the different viewpoints. This was really an idea I had, and I really take on board Councillor Earl Williams' point about fresh blood. The members were picked up as a standard from Battle's marketing group. And they are not set in stone, and I am quite prepared to change them to make it a bit more meaningful, because there's nothing quite so distasteful as people that perhaps have been around too long with old ideas. But this is really about parity, and it's about a strategy for the recovery of Bexhill in particular. So that's pretty much all I have to say. We want to coordinate the strategy and obviously work very closely with 1066 because they do a wonderful job as well. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. I'm just wondering on a way to go forward on this. So I've got resolved. Councillor Stevens, you want to come back?
Thank you, Chair. Yes. We also work with 1066. We've had numerous meetings in Rye, tourist meetings, above my pub actually, with the tourist people, Barry down at Rye Harbour, loads of people. And I think that the Rye events group should be the same as the Bexhill one. I'm not saying I don't want Bexhill to have their own one, but we want our one as well. That's really it. I just think it's fair.
Okay, thank you. Well, let's see if we can get a general consensus. Item 1, authorise the constitution of a Bexhill marketing group under the proposed terms of reference, including Old Town Preservation Group. Is that one okay?
Chairman, that's what I've got marked down as including Bexhill Old Town Preservation Society.
Yeah. So we're happy with that, are we? I've not got anything come up on my chat, so I'll assume we're happy with that one. 2, allocate £9,000 from the council's events budget to Bexhill Marketing Group to support the marketing and promotion of Bexhill in 2021-22 onwards, including
Chairman,
Bexhill
I'm less happy with that. It's not so much the allocation of the 9,000. It's the limitation which says it's marketing and promotion. Frankly, I led the tourism task force to say it's fine, I think, if you have a Bexhill group determining this, but it does seem to me that they need to take on board the fact that support for events was identified by the tourism task force as the best way forward. Now, this year, COVID's got in the way, but it seems to me it's not so much the marketing of Bexhill, but the events which matter. And I think it would be a shame if the marketing board vitiated that strategy.
Would it find favour if we said for 1 year only on this sort of thing? Maybe, I don't know. I'm just trying to move it forward. I get what you say. It's this year isn't normal. Who's to say next year is going to be normal either?
I'd be very happy if they had considerable discretion this year, because getting the economy started is quite important. But I think they couldn't. I think they do need to consider what the Tourism Task Force says in the coming year, that's next year, about events.
Okay. Councillor Cortell.
I wondered whether we could achieve consensus, Chair, by taking on what Councillor Barnes has said and just adding events to the list of things together with marketing and promotion in paragraph 2 and leaving it to the Bexhill Marketing Group as to whether they want to fund those events and to what extent, but not precluding events.
Yeah. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. I think that we're in danger of trying to reinvent the wheel when in fact we'd already moved towards actually focusing that pump priming where it needed to be. And I can remember in her early days on the council, Councillor Mrs. Deirdre Williams was very keen that instead of just talking about things and instead of woolly marketing, that we actually focused money where it would have pump primed events. And frankly, under the previous administration, that was hugely successful. That change, that move to focusing on events rather than simple marketing was hugely successful. And the bang for your buck you get for the taxpayers of Rother from actually focusing on events, not just in Bexhill, but in Battle and Rye as well. That event focus has been hugely successful, but it's been particularly successful in Bexhill. And I will just mention the former councillor, Councillor Simon Elford, who really pushed forward with that when he had the portfolio. And I think actually this is a retrograde step. I think actually to go backwards to just have interested parties sit round a table to try and spend £9,000 is a retrograde step. What you need to do is have a sensible events focus so you can bring in people to the towns so that you can actually get the maximum number of people to those events to get them self-sustaining. We've seen the huge success of a number of events over the past decade in Bexhill. I think, Chairman, this is going backwards and I'm against it. Thank you, Chairman.
Okay. Councillor Timpey, you wish to come back?
Yeah, I went round and round with Ben and his team on this because I'm very much event oriented. And it was really to create some sort of recovery strategy aimed at Bexhill in particular. But I wouldn't be stopping at the £9,000. I would be looking at a much higher budget for events for this area. And I'm not sure why Councillor Maynard is shaking his head, because I agree with Councillor Barnes in that we will have a tourist trail, we'll have all sorts of things going on throughout the whole district. And I'm not sure that people quite are comprehending that at the moment.
Yes. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I just want to respond to Councillor Timpey because I'm shaking my head because we haven't got a magic money tree. These may only be small amounts of money, but we're looking at a 2 million shortfall. And to actually think that we're going to have growth areas for this authority is just not only politically naive, but it's erring on the really stupid.
A bit harsh, but
I've been called many things. How honourable! Thank you so much.
Where was I? Yeah. So two is proving awkward. We might have to go to a vote on that one. 3, approve that £9,000 event funding for Bexhill not allocated in 2021 financial year be carried forward. So that is not an additional, that is just the 9,000, I'm assuming. Yes, is that right, Tony?
It is. It's what's in this current year carrying forward the 9,000. There's another 9,000 which is for Rye, but that'll be carried forward. But remember, this is a recommendation up to Cabinet, and Cabinet may take a different view.
Yeah,
I think the important thing, Chairman, and I think Councillor Cortell echoed that, it's one thing when there are no events not to spend on events, but I think if we're going to have a task force in Bexhill, you do need that 9,000 to be available for events when they start again.
Yeah. Councillor Coleman, you're into events, I assume?
Well, probably. Yeah. I first of all, I think I echo Councillor Barnes in terms of making sure that when events can get back up and running, that there is obviously the money available to support those events and the focus returns back to events. But Chair, is it all right if I just get some clarity on whether Councillor Maynard is suggesting that whilst events can't be taking place because of COVID, that we just don't spend any money in that area because there aren't events happening and you can't spend money on events that don't exist, or whether he just doesn't like the idea of promoting our area whilst we can't hold events, so that when the events take place, we've got a nice sort of fluffing of promotion behind it, so that when we can get back to having events, we can get back to getting tourists down here, making money for our economy and supporting our local tourism industry, because it wasn't perfect under his administration. There are lots of improvements that need to be made to the events area. So it's all very well Councillor Maynard tooting his horn, as he has done all evening this evening, when everyone else has been having a pretty non-political discussion on most matters. But I'd just suggest that if Councillor Maynard hasn't got any solutions, that he maybe doesn't keep pushing forward his own past problems. Thank you, Chair.
I think, to be fair, that the idea originally was to promote events that then became self-funding. I think that's where Councillor Maynard's coming from. Would I be correct in that, Carl?
To be fair, Chair, Councillor Coleman says he's not going to be political and then makes a political speech. So there we go. No, let's just take this back a stage. The fact of the matter is that the focus on events has been hugely successful in Bexhill. Motorfest, the Fishing Festival, the Roaring 20s, so on and so forth. That events focus has been hugely, hugely important. And I'm not for a moment suggesting that we don't continue to do that. And I'm not for a moment suggesting that we should stop investing in any of our towns. What I'm saying is very clearly that the focus should still be events-led and on pump priming those successful events, not upon a group of people sitting around in a group thinking about how they can market, and the actual money doesn't get to where it needs to get. And the money needs to get to support events. That's what I'm saying, so that nobody can be under any illusions. It's not about blowing my horn, it's about saying what needs to happen in the towns in terms of promoting events effectively as an authority, rather than just giving the money to a group that you know, inwardly chat about things and actually look at marketing in their own way. We need to be focused and spend money effectively. That's what I'm talking about.
I think, to be fair to Councillor Timpett, she did say that she was keen on events. So I'd say take that as, if she says she's keen on events, and there will be an element of events focus. I may be wrong. Councillor Stevens, I think you want to come back again.
Yeah, sorry, Chair. I just want to say that point 4, I don't agree with the 9,000 going to Rye Bay marketing, because I think that money needs to be left in the pot for next year, so that when our events do come back, like Festival of the Sea, the Christmas Festival, really successful things that have happened in Rye, that they'll need more money because of this year, and we should have that in the pot ready for them to start up again. So I don't agree with it going to Rye Bay marketing. Thank you.
Thank you. Can you just clarify this one, Tony, on 4, the £9,000, there's not two £9,000, is there? There's just the one £9,000, which either Jeanette's group has or doesn't. Is that right?
As I said, there's been no spending of this year's events funding, which was £18,000. Yeah.
Yeah.
In the past, that's sort of been 9,000 allocated to Bexhill, 9,000 to Rye. And what I think Councillor Stevens is saying is that because we've had this request in for Rye Bay Marketing to spend this money that hasn't been spent, she would rather see this be rolled forward to next year to actually help support the getting the events programme off the ground with a flying start with more money on that basis. Now, within the report, we do suggest that that might be appropriate for Bexhill as well. But as Councillor Timpey said, she would like to set up this marketing group to use that money for this year and next year to move it forward, and under a new terms of reference as set out at Appendix A. So I think what we've got at the moment is that if we go back a step, is I think you need to take these recommendations one at a time in order to get them clarified. Otherwise, there could be a bit of a mess here. I think really the terms of reference one almost needs to come after the other recommendations around the allocation of the setting up the Bexhill Marketing Group. If the Bexhill Marketing Group isn't supported, then it's about, do we then roll that funding forward to next year for supporting events? And if that's not supported, then we're basically saying there'll be an underspend this year on that, and it will go to the back into the budget. And we do the same for the RI one as well.
Yeah, that's what I kept thinking. So ultimately, say on 4, to my simplistic mind, there's £18,000. This year's has not been spent, which we can keep hold of, and say Jeanette's group can have, and the £9,000 that would have been allocated can go to Rybay marketing. So to me, everybody should be happy.
No, because then Bexhill wouldn't have any money.
Ah, right. Well, that's right, isn't it? I'm miles away. No one can come and get me over here.
Well, I wouldn't comment.
Right. Okay. Right. I'll tell you what. Let's go back to the first one.
Chairman, just to make clear that I have no worry about having a local group, as RI do, for Bexhill. My worry is about how you get Bexhill started again. And I would want that group to look at Tourist Task Force recommendations and actually put events at the centre of the programme rather than marketing. Now, marketing is an interesting exercise, and no doubt they will want to do a bit of that as well as Battle do. But the major thing is to actually get the events restarted, and that will have to be next year now.
Yeah. Councillor Dixon.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for letting me come back. Some of the issues with the events budget was that Rother does not have the facility or the staff to be able to administer this £18,000 sufficiently. This is why Battle has its own £9,000, because it has a constituted body to be able to give out that money. And what Battle does is it actually markets the events. We already have the events in Battle. We don't necessarily need any more. We need to market the events that we already have, hence the term Battle Marketing Group. I would have thought that a solution to today's issues may be that Bexhill and Rye maybe can create marketing and event groups where the groups are actually given the responsibility of giving out the money to prime events and market them as well at the same time, and that will save rather the issue of having to deal with the money itself. That's maybe something to think on and to develop over the before the cabinet comes to cabinet, and we can certainly take on board everyone's opinions today. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. I understand that Councillor Errington has lost access. He's trying to get back in, just in case. Well, shall we go? I think the easiest thing to do is go through them in. So on 1, do we authorise constitution of the Bexhill Marketing Group? So that's fine. Do we need a vote on each one?
Chairman, I would actually do it in. I would take actually recommendation 2 first, because if you could actually vote on recommendation 1 and then recommendation 2 may fail. So I think
it won't get anywhere.
Yeah.
Okay.
And is recommendation 2 going to be reworded as
to include and events? Suggested? Yes, it's being worded with support the marketing and promotion and events at Bexhill from 2021-22.
Excuse me, Chair.
Yeah.
Okay. The actual title of Bexhill Marketing Group came via Ben and his team. And, I would have preferred it to be just Bexhill Events Group. So if that seems to be the hang up, then that's what it can be, because I am very conscious that those are the things that bring in the tourists. Those are the things that are successful for Bexhill, and they need to continue. So, I don't have an issue with what we call it, or how many people are in it, because I think it's too big a group anyway in the list, but that's, I think, for clarification, maybe when and if it goes to cabinet. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Chairman. I think that clarification, I think, from Councillor Timpey is really helpful. I think that I would still have my reservations because I clearly think that at the moment we as a council can specifically focus on events rather than, frankly, marketing campaigns that in the past haven't been particularly successful. And it is around that offence focus that I still have concerns. I mean, at this stage, I don't think, again, Cabinet will do its own thing anyway. But at this stage, I won't support it. But I look forward to Councillor Timpey taking on the comments that have been made at scrutiny today. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Right, what I'll do, I'll go back to item 2 then.
Chairman, I know Councillor Cook, your Vice Chairman, has been trying to get in for a while, so I'm just raising it for you.
Oh, yeah. Sorry, Councillor Cook.
That's okay. Thank you very much indeed, Dr. Leonard. Thank you, Chair. At Battle, we call ourselves the Battle Marketing Group, and yet we do promote events. We do help to sub-events, and people can apply for funding to do that. I notice we're called Battle Marketing Group, not Battle Marketing and Events. I see Rye Bay Marketing Group. I think it would be much better to call it Bexhill Marketing Group, because when the public read this, they'll say, well, why has Bexhill got money for events and Battle hasn't? I think there will be confusion, and I would like to suggest that they stick to Battle Marketing Group as their name.
You stuck a big spanner right in my works now. Right. So, 2, allocate the council's budget event, Bexhill Events and Marketing Group. Support the marketing and promotion of Bexhill 2021 to 2022. Are we all happy with that? Louise, do we need a vote on each one of these?
Chairman, I think it would be wise to do that because there's a lot of discussion on each item. If you may, I suggest that if you do support that one, then you tie in the constitution of Bexhill Marketing Group be then supported as Appendix A.
Okay, well, that saves us a bit of time, doesn't it? Yeah. All right.
It doesn't, because I'm sorry, Chairman. Councillor Timpey's already said she thinks that group's too large, and Councillor Deirdre Williams has said it looks a bit old hat. I'd rather not tie those. If we decide that we're going to have a Bexhill Events and Marketing Group, I'd rather we gave a little more thought between now and Cabinet to what is the right constitution of that group. I don't see why we need to recommend that particular constitution. I'm happy to support an Events and Marketing Group with a budget, but I really think to tie it to a particular constitution without a bit more thought, and possibly actually even talking to Councillor Dixon, who chaired the Tourism Task Force and has a lot of experience, would be very useful.
Well, we're recommending to Cabinet, so Cabinet will with respect do as they wish to it. So
that's why I wonder whether you shouldn't carry this discussion forward in a rather more general set of recommendations, because it seems to me that there is a broad consensus about what we think needs to be done to get Bexhill restarted. It's when you get to particular wording or particular constitution, there's a bit of a problem. If we can find a way of endorsing the thrust of what is wanted, and that will be helpful, I think.
Yeah, I've got Councillor Coleman wants to make a point of order.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I think this is a point of order. Perhaps it might be worth just reminding members to use the chat facility when they wish to speak, rather than just shouting out, as I think that's about the 5th time that Councillor Barnes, whilst making valuable contributions, has interrupted the meeting.
Sam, the chat is not working for me, I'm afraid.
Chat wasn't working for me either.
Councillor Maynard.
Thank you, Chairman.
Working
At
for
risk of
you.
labouring the point, I think the point that Councillor Barnes has just made is a really important one. We don't want to, end up with a pedantic conversation and a very tied recommendation up to Cabinet. I think there genuinely is a broad consensus, I think, now around that events focus. But again, I still have genuine concerns, and that's why I say I can't support something until, as I'm in a similar position to Councillor Barnes. I think we need to understand what it is really that you're trying to change to enhance, because actually that focus on events has been really, really good. I think the situation in Rye, I think, is distinctly different, because I think what Councillor Stevens has said, and she will correct me vociferously if I'm wrong, is that she wants to make sure that Rye still gets that £9,000 and that it does go into events in Rye. And that's what's hugely important to her and the residents of Rye. So, but I am just concerned, like Councillor Barnes, that if we go with a straightforward for or against, actually we're sending a rather rigid message. What Cabinet needs to understand, and I'm sure Councillor Timpey and others will take that away, and Councillor Dixon, who's also in the meeting, will take that away, that actually we're just concerned around perhaps that spread of that split of marketing versus events. We want to make sure that those events that we've pump primed in the past, and Councillor Coleman, I make no apologies for saying we've done that very successfully, but we make sure that that still happens. That, I think, we're in a broad consensus. But as I say, without knowing, again, the real reasons behind trying to change what we've got, I still find myself, if you put it to a vote, I don't think every member, frankly, and no disrespect to any other councillor sitting around the virtual table tonight, but I'm not convinced that everybody knows what they'd actually be voting for.
Well, we've been tasked with getting something up to Cabinet. Tony, have you got any pointers?
Yeah, Jamie, if I may help then, from what I've gauged from the conversation to date, is that there is a nervousness about this report, but there does need to be a decision made in order to know which way we're taking this. So if I may, is that if we look at recommendation 2, for clarity, allocate the £9,000 for the council's events budget to Bexhill Events and Marketing Group to support the marketing, promotion and events of Bexhill from 2021-22 onwards. As for the terms of reference, I get the impression that we'd like to have that reviewed to take more of an emphasis on the event side of things. So we don't actually recommend a terms of reference to Cabinet at this moment, but they're reviewed and revised and presented to Cabinet as an addendum later on. And then if members aren't happy from overview and scrutiny committee, they can call those terms of reference in if they don't think it meets their requirements on that basis. That gives some sort of safety net then for the scrutiny to actually have that say in the terms of reference. But I get the impression the terms of reference aren't significantly supported because of the way the recommendation 2 is going. And that the recommendation 3 is to prove that the 9,000 events funding for Bexhill not allocated in 2021 financially be carried forward into 21-22, which then gives that position for the Bexhill Events and Marketing Group to have an impact in the following year. As for recommendation 4, we have not fully had that discussion yet, but I'm getting the impression that the £9,000 usually allocated to Rye will be rolled forward to next year's Rye Events Group. That's as I understand at the moment, but there's been no movers or seconders on any of these at the moment. So I'm just trying to help you through on that. So you may just want to take those one at a time, as I've just explained. Yeah.
Okay. Well, we need to take 2 first, and then we do to actually have some money to spend before we set up a group. Is that right?
Do you want me to read that out again then for number 2, Chairman, so that everyone's clear what they're voting on?
Yeah, do that.
So recommendation 2 will be allocate the £9,000 for the council's event budget to Bexhill Events and Marketing Group to support the marketing and promotion and events of Bexhill from 2021-22 onwards.
Yep, and that is moved by Councillor Cook. Do I have a seconder for that? Councillor Cortell's put his hand up. We'll go to the vote on that one, please, Louise.
Okay, thank you, Chairman. Councillors, I will call your names out alphabetically. Please respond with for, against or abstain. Once your name has been called, switch on your microphone only to vote. If you do not answer after your name has been called twice or contact is lost, members will be recorded as abstaining. Councillor Barnes.
For as amended.
Councillor Carroll.
For as amended.
Councillor Clark.
For as amended.
Councillor Mrs Cook.
For.
Councillor Cortell.
For.
Councillor Mrs Earl Williams.
For as amended.
Councillor Errington.
For.
Councillor Gray.
For.
Councillor Langlands.
For.
Councillor Maynard.
For as amended. Thank you very much.
Councillor Mooney.
For.
And Councillor Osborne.
For.
That's unanimous. So carried,
It's
Chairman.
unanimous. Oh, and we're unanimous. So.
On recommendation 3 then, Chairman, is as printed.
Yeah.
If you want to take the vote on that, what I will do is include, just take the vote on that one.
Yeah. Mover on that one, please. Councillor Cook, I would assume. Yeah, and a seconder.
Oh, yes, I second it.
Yeah, Councillor Mooney, thank you very much. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Barnes. Councillor Barnes.
For.
Councillor Carroll.
For.
Councillor Clark.
For.
Councillor Mrs Cook.
For.
Councillor Cortell.
For.
Councillor Mrs Earl Williams.
For.
Councillor Errington.
For.
Councillor Gray.
For.
Councillor Langlands.
For.
Councillor Maynard.
For.
Councillor Mooney.
For.
And Councillor Osborne.
For.
That's unanimous.
Thank you very much.
Good.
And then number 4. So £9,000 usually allocated to RYE be awarded as a one-off grant to RYE Bay Marketing Limited for their 2021 campaign. The consensus seems to be that that does not happen, and that the £9,000 usually allocated to RYE will be allocated to the usual marketing group in RYE. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's it.
Someone want to move that?
I move.
Chairman, surely, sorry, point of order. We have to surely dispose of that recommendation by voting against and then substituting a fresh recommendation.
Chairman, if I may, as it was a particular request, I suggest that the 9,000 usually allocated right to be awarded to one that be not supported, and that the 9,000 be rolled forward to next year by events group. That makes it very clear.
Does that satisfy Councillor Barnes?
No, saves time. I'm happy to vote, move that.
All right. Well, I'll take you down as a seconder because Councillor Mooney moved it.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Good. You ready?
Yes,
okay.
I second that. Yes, fine.
Yep. All right. Thank you very much. Over to you, Louise.
Thank you, Chairman. Councillor Barnes.
For as amended.
Councillor Carroll.
For as amended.
Councillor Clark.
For as amended.
Councillor Mrs Cook.
Abstain.
Oh, thank you. Councillor Cortell.
For as amended.
Councillor Mrs Earl Williams.
For as amended.
Councillor Errington.
For as amended.
Councillor Gray.
For.
Councillor Langlands.
For as amended.
Councillor Maynard,
4.
Councillor Mooney,
4.
and Councillor Osborne.
4.
And then, Chair, just on the final one on the terms of reference, as I understand it, members don't wish to vote on that, but just to leave it and not take that forward. And the revised terms of reference will be presented to Cabinet following further conversation with the portfolio holder on tonight's meetings and comments. And if members aren't happy with the terms of references presented to Cabinet, they can call it in.
Yep. Excellent.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Yeah, agreed. Thank you very much. Right. That was a bit of a marathon, but we got there in the end. Thank you very much. Item 8, revenue budget and capital programme monitoring Q1. This has been to Cabinet, so if it looks a bit of deja vu, then it is if you attended Cabinet last week because it was reported there. Tony, over to you. Probably not much to say, actually.
Thank you, Chair. And I'll try and keep it as short as I can. So it's a replay from last Monday's, and apologies to members that have already heard this. Unfortunately, over the last 7 days, the picture hasn't got any brighter since last Monday. If I could just draw committee's attention to a couple of amendments, please. In paragraph 35, the deficit figure should be 1.9 million rather than 1.3 million. And in paragraph 36, the reserves figure should be 12.677 million. It doesn't alter any of the other figures in the report. It's a typo, if you like, and I apologise for that. So the headlines, Chair. The original budget, we planned to use £917,000 of reserves, and unfortunately the forecast has turned out at the moment at 2.8 million, which is 1.9 million over budget. And about 1.7 million of that is down to the council's response to the coronavirus pandemic. And that's summarised in table 4, in paragraph 4 for members. Paragraph 5, I did mention, I mean, every forecast that you do has a level of uncertainty, and that's always exacerbated at the beginning of the financial year. In this case, it's even more exacerbated than that due to the coronavirus, or the nature of the coronavirus pandemic. We could have further lockdowns, local lockdowns, national lockdowns. So it's inevitable that some of the figures that members see before them now, they will change, and they could change quite considerably as the financial year unfolds. Excuse me. So the variances are covered in paragraph 7 to 29. I won't go through everything. I'm sure members have read the report, but I will try just some of the larger items. Planning fee income, paragraph 10, we're expecting that to be £186,000 shortfall on the budget. Property rents in paragraph 12, we've made a provision of £200,000 for that. That doesn't necessarily translate into a shortfall at the moment because we haven't written off any rent arrears at this point in time. We haven't taken any enforcement action yet, but we have started sending reminders to tenants. So the £200,000 is, if you like, a sort of acknowledgement that there could be a downside on our property rental income as the year unfolds, and unfortunately businesses may go under. Paragraph 15, I think this is well documented. There's a £415,000 support package to Freedom Leisure, whom we're supporting operationally and financially. And again, we're looking to protect the council's interests as well as supporting Freedom Leisure in that goal. And should that figure look like it's going to be high, we'll report that back to members through the financial year. And same with the Delaware Pavilion in paragraph 15. There's a support package that Cabinet's approved of £350,000. Joe has touched on this several times in his report tonight on temporary accommodation rough sleepers. So I won't repeat what Joe said there, but there's a £648,000 overspend associated with those issues. And same with car parks as well, where we're reporting about a £235,000 downturn in income. And finally, garden waste and recycling income in paragraph 18. It does say 115,000 in the report. Joe's kindly updated that number, so that should be closer to 100,000. Investment income in paragraph 23 I've touched upon. It's no secret that global markets have been well and truly hit by the impact of the virus. We think this is going to have an impact of around about £148,000 on our interest income target. And there has been an impact on our property fund investment values. There's been an impact on the market values, but we do hope that over time these values will recover to their former amounts. They're long-term investments, so they don't give us any immediate cause for concern. Lines 13 to 16 on the large table on the second page of the report, there's variances totaling 748,000 there, and I've referred to those also in paragraph 25. They're not. We don't expect those now to materialise, and that's largely because the property investment activity has slowed down during lockdown. So we're not anticipating at this point in time any major change in the level of rent income this financial year. And the same goes for work on lean and demand and service efficiencies. That clearly had to stop during the pandemic as we addressed other more pressing issues. Throughout the report, there's several references to fees and charges where we think we're going to underachieve by about £645,000. Now, the government have recently launched a scheme, if you like, whereby we can claim some of that back. We hope to get around about £341,000 of that back based on current Q1 forecasts. And that figure clearly is a very much a movable feast as the financial year unfolds and the forecasts are updated. Broadly speaking, we won't get a pound for pound refund, if you like, or reimbursement. There is a formula that we have to use to get some of that money back. Paragraphs 27 to 29, I've mentioned there that we've received about £2.1 million by way of additional grant from the government or from the MHCLG, and that's detailed in lines 31 to 36 of the table. The grants have been announced at various stages of the crisis, so it's not all come in one hit. It's not clear at this stage whether any further funding will be forthcoming, so the forecasters assume that won't be the case. But clearly that picture might change, especially in the event of further lockdowns. Paragraph 30 hopefully neatly summarises the impact on the council's reserves. Just a little bit about collection fund performance. Our council tax collection fund, council tax performance is about 1.58% below budget at the moment, and business rates is broadly in line with budget. But that picture clearly could change quite dramatically, particularly as furlough winds down in the next few weeks, and there may be more of an adverse impact on businesses as well. So that figure needs to be treated with a bit of caution. The one thing I would say is that any deficit that we incur in the collection fund will not actually affect the current year's the current financial year, and in actual fact. The MHCLG have indicated that we can spread that impact over 3 years. So the problem doesn't disappear, unfortunately, but it does at least give us an opportunity to alleviate the pressure over the forthcoming financial years. And finally, capital programme is reported in appendices A and B. It shows the current year and the 5-year programme as updated by members for decisions that they've made recently, and also to take into account slippage from the previous financial year. So that's it from me, Chair, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you very much, Tony. Let's have a look. Anybody? Councillor Barnes, you said hurrah, it worked. Did you wish to speak or not?
I wanted to ask a little about. I'm rather uncertain about Q1 capital programme. In paragraph 34, it refers to additional projects, and I have a feeling there were 1 or 2 additional projects that have already been added in from discussions at Cabinet. I'm wondering really what the total capital programme now is, and what is the cost of servicing it?
Go on then.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Well, good news that it's all working anyway. The capital programme is, as it says on paper, and that's clearly going to be subject to several changes over the forthcoming months as well. So that's an up-to-date picture as I can give you at the moment. In terms of servicing it, if I can refer Councillor Barnes back to, well, first of all, back to the table on the second page. And if you look at lines 10 and 11, the line 10 is titled MRP, or minimum revenue provision. That's how much by way of borrowing we have to pay back in the current financial year. And line 11 is interest payments. That's how much interest expenditure that we will incur, or we expect to incur in the current financial year. Excuse me, Chair, again. So to answer the question, how much is it costing to service us this year? It's about £850,000.
Right. Thank you. Okay. Anyone else? Still gone quiet? Getting late in the evening? Councillor Mooney must have something to say. He's an accountant.
Didn't know that.
Can you?
Go on in. Yep, you're on now.
Yeah, can you hear me? I was wondering, Mr. Baden, how the figure of 1719 on at paragraph 4 equates to the columns you referred to, which was columns 21 to 29. I tried to work it out. I couldn't work it out. But you specifically says that they refer to columns 21 and 29.
You lost me.
Sorry, that's
check
on
it,
page 38.
Sorry, I've lost the threads of the questions.
You have said that the figures on page 38, starting with line 21, yes, to line 29, equate to the figures, to the little calculation you did on page 39, netting off to 1.7, and I can't get that to match.
So I still, I mean, sorry to be a bit slow. I'm still trying to understand the question. Which paragraph were you referring to? Paragraph 2.
Yeah, I was referring to, yes, paragraph 2. I think you say columns.
I think it's paragraph 4 you're referring to.
Yeah, actually, it's paragraph 4. Yes, paragraph 4.
Okay.
It said the council's response to COVID-19 pandemic has inevitably put the budget under enormous pressure despite some costs, etc., etc., etc. What I'm trying to do is to reconcile that little block there, which starts off with expenditure stroke income shortfalls arising from COVID-19, 3886, and then MHLCL grant 4167. Now that the sum is okay, but when you go back to the schedule on page 38, which you have said somewhere that it's to deal with lines 21 to 29, I can't reconcile the two. In other words, what I'm doing is I'm adding up the grants, yeah. And
okay.
Where am I going wrong?
Okay. Right. First of all, I may go over things that you already know here, so apologies if I am doing so. So paragraph 4, the 1.79 impact on reserves. That's the impact of COVID on the council's finances. There is another £200,000 on top of that, which makes the overall overspend 1.9 million, as detailed on line 43 on page 38. Does that answer the question?
Thank you. That answers the question. Yes, thank you.
Okay. Sorry for being a bit slow to pick that up.
Yeah, I didn't see, you didn't mention the 200 million anywhere, you see, so that foxed me a bit. Thank you.
Sorry about that. Okay.
Thank you, Chair.
Cool. Right. Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. The issue's now been covered.
Thank you. Councillor Langlands.
Thank you, Chair. Just a very quick one, actually, and it concerns paragraphs 10 and 11 in strategy and planning section on page 40. It really bothers me that I keep reading that the department continues to experience recruitment difficulties, because that's been a really long-term thing, and I have to sort of question why we can't actually engage people to come and work for Rother. But what I really wanted to ask is, by engaging consultants, could you tell me how many that is that have cost 112,000, because it would be useful, and how long have we had these consultants?
That'd be one for Tony or Malcolm.
Yeah.
Tony, do you? I'll take this one.
Thank you,
Councillor Chairman. The consultants are people we've just brought in. I think there are 3 we've had over a period of time. They've come down from the area, but the problems with recruitment is it's a national shortage of planners at the moment, and has been for some time. And whilst we advertise and have advertised, and we've had occasional success, most of our recruitment has been from training people in-house and bringing them through the ranks in that way. But there is a national shortage. It is being understood by the Planning Advisory Service at how do you get more people wanting to come into this profession, and it's proving extremely difficult at the moment. So we're still in that position, Councillor Langland.
Okay, right, thank you. So that 112,000 has pretty well covered 3 consultants, has it?
When you call them consultants, they are really sort of temporary staff, but you're people who are on agency staff rather than consultants. Right. It's probably the wrong term to use, but it's we go through recruitment agencies, we bring them in. We've even had people one of them was from Australia, so they were over here on a temporary sort of basis with a temporary work permit, was looking for work and came down here, nice bit along the coast where they did earn some money. But yes, at the moment, the temporary, they're not consultants, but they are people who are on temporary contracts.
Okay, thank you for that explanation.
Okay.
Thank you. Councillor Cook, you wish to move that the report be noted?
Yes, please, I would. There have been no particular contentious issues. The questions that have been asked have been very ably answered by Mr. Baden and by Dr. Leonard. So I would like to propose that this report is noted.
Thank you. And a seconder for that? Put you down, Councillor Mooney, as you know all about it. Anybody? We all gone frozen.
Councillor Mooney, you're muted, Councillor Mooney.
Sorry, I'll go along with that. I'll go along with that. That's fine, Chair.
That's
sorry,
seconded.
I couldn't unmute myself.
Okay. Don't make a habit of it. We'll put that down as it's been moved by Councillor Cook, seconded by Councillor Mooney. Not in agreement, all in favour of a noting of that. Thank you. Thank you very much, Tony.
Thank you, Chair.
Right. Last thing, work programme. So, you see the work programme, so 14.9 is today, so that's done. 19.10, so 19th of October, we got down medium-term financial plan. There was a slight concern from Robin about timescales on that because of what's going on. Is that still correct, Councillor Dixon or Tony?
Chairman, if I can answer that one, yes, that is still correct. We think it would be wiser to see the Q2 outturn before we start relying on any figures for the medium-term financial plan. So the proposal is that we will probably withdraw that from that committee. There may be still a report going to Cabinet to explain the reasons why we are withdrawing it, because it would have gone to Cabinet prior. And I think it's important that we do explain the reasons why. But just for tonight's meeting, it's mainly around being confident in the figures, and we're hoping that by Q2 we will have a better picture of the current financial year. Tony Baden can add to that if there's anything I've missed.
Thank you, Chair. I've not really got much to add to it, but I mean, as Malcolm says, we wish to be more certain around the figures. I mean, there's, and I think, as I said in the report itself, there's a lot more volatility around the numbers this year than we'd normally expect. So that's why we think it's advisable to go for November. And as Malcolm says, we'll be dropping a report to. We'll be doing a report this week to explain that to members at the next cabinet.
Okay, so would we be looking at that at the November meeting, or we can't do it at the January meeting because that's when the draft revenue comes up. So we need the draft budget proposals before then, won't we? So
yeah,
and we've already got revenue budget capital monitoring 2. So I'm just thinking of the timescales.
Yeah, the intent. I think the intention, Chair, is to take it to the November cabinet report.
Right. So we won't.
Well, I know
necessarily. Yeah. So we won't necessarily see it then.
I'm not offhand. I don't know when the next scrutiny meeting is.
Well, we're on the 23rd of the 11th. 23rd November, and then the next one after that is the 25th of January. So the 25th of January is the draft revenue budget proposals and key performance targets. And the 23rd of November, we've got revenue budget Q2. So obviously we don't want the medium-term financial plan going at the same time as the revenue budget Q2 and the housing, the anti-poverty task and finish group and performance reports. Any thoughts? Anyone? Tony?
Chairman.
Or Malcolm, sorry.
I was just checking I wasn't muted. I'm just checking the dates for meetings on, and Cabinet is actually at the beginning of November. So we could bring it to the 23rd of November meeting, because that would be I know you've got the Q2 monitoring, but that actually might just reinforce some of the points we're making about a degree of confidence in the figures that we're putting in there to take it forward. So I would suggest that we move that into there. And I'm saying this without knowing the answer to it. The issue for members is, do you want something on the 19th of October, in which case the one that would seem obvious to bring forward, and this is only if it's possible, was the Pelham project update. Now that will mean having basically a single item meeting, but that would at least take something off what could be a very full agenda. And I think the Pelham could be an interesting discussion for members anyway, so it might be worth just giving a little bit of time on that subject alone. So I would suggest, pending having a discussion with Ollie at the Pelham, that everything is okay for him to do the 19th of October. If members were in agreement, we bring that forward to the 19th, take it off the 23rd and move the medium-term financial plan. And I think that if again, Chairman, if I may suggest that the order would probably be that whatever way you look at it, you look at the revenue budget and capital monitoring, and then look at the medium-term financial plan to give members that degree of assurance they're at least basing the MTFP on some solid data.
Okay.
That makes, sorry, Chairman, that makes a lot of sense.
Good. Okay. I remembered saying the other day as well, the peer
Chairman,
review got dragged in last year.
Sorry, Chairman. Sorry, Chairman, I missed that.
The peer review, I remembered that the other day for some reason. Is that something that comes via us, or does that get looked at or anything?
It has traditionally in the past not come to scrutiny. It's gone either through, sometimes through, it's gone to Cabinet as a report to Cabinet. And then if there are any issues to come out of it, I just, I mean, you know, the leader of the council may have a view, or other Cabinet members may have a view. I just, we've sent the peer review out to all members. I just wonder slightly whether events have overtaken it slightly, and but that's a decision for members, obviously.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, so
Can I,
that makes
can
sense.
I just say, I mean,
so we,
Chairman, we've always looked at the peer review very carefully, and I just wonder why it hasn't come in front of members.
Chairman, if I can clarify, it was sent out to all members so that they were aware of what was in it, and then we got into COVID and the issues that have arisen since then. I mean, I'm happy to take a steer from Cabinet on what they want to do with it. I don't have a problem. I just wonder whether in the scheme of events, it was looking at a council in a very different period of time.
okay. So is everybody happy? Well, given, well, subject to the Pelham, the manager man at the Pelham project, should we take that just as a simple single item to get it sort of done, an update? I've been quite busy during this time with the hub, I understand. So that will give us something in October, and then we just have to have another long one in November.
Chair, I've been trying to speak for some time.
Yeah. Go on.
Sorry, can I speak, Chair?
Yeah, yeah.
Thank you. I just think that we have a massive amount to get through at the November meeting. The anti-poverty task and finish group is going to be a big item. The homelessness report is going to be absolutely massive. We've got financial reports to look at as well, and if we leave the medium-term financial plan until after Cabinet, then we are being reactive rather than feeding into it. And because the decision will have been made at Cabinet de facto. I'm wondering whether we could move the Overview and Scrutiny Committee meeting by a week, or perhaps a week and a day, to say the Tuesday the 27th of October, which would enable the figures to be considered and have some genuine input into strategy from this committee.
Chairman, can I just make the point that it is not unusual for a strategy to go to Cabinet for consideration and then Cabinet ask Overview and Scrutiny for its views. So I don't think Scrutiny should be concerned about that, because I think, you know, often, you know, as you've had tonight, the budget report has already been to Cabinet, but Cabinet still asks Scrutiny to consider it and to look at any views. So there's nothing to stop Scrutiny considering it after Cabinet, because Cabinet does it on the understanding that Scrutiny will put forward any views. And bear in mind that the medium-term financial strategy, given that it is a long-term strategy and given the level of uncertainty that we're operating under at the minute, is quite a movable feast in many ways. So I think it actually makes little practical difference whether Cabinet consider it, then Scrutiny, then back to Cabinet, because I can assure members that probably the way things are going, in the time that takes, it will have altered and will be amended, whatever the process we use is. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I think I'd agree with you there. Councillor
And
Maynard.
so would I. And so would I.
Sorry, I'm trying to indicate.
Councillor Maynard, hang on, John. I've got.
Thank you, Chairman. I think so that we can discuss the document that's been spoken about, the peer review document. I would move that the peer review document is reviewed by Scrutiny on the 19th of October. Thank you. I hope I've got a seconder.
Chairman, can I just say that I will if that is the wish of scrutiny, I will attempt, but I cannot guarantee at this point in time I can get a report on it to members.
Okay.
Just bear in mind that the timetable for getting reports out basically means that report needs to be written in the next couple of weeks to get the process through. So I think it would be, if members wish to add it to items for consideration in the work programme, then that's obviously a decision of scrutiny. But I can't guarantee at this point tonight that I can get a report on the peer review to that meeting. Apologies for that, but I just think it's important to be upfront with members on that.
Yeah. Okay. Councillor Barnes, you wish to come in?
Yes, I apologise, Chairman. My chat button seems to have ceased working again. It's frozen. I wanted to support Councillor Cortell, certainly on the notion of not overloading the 23rd of November meeting. Whether we need to fit an extra meeting in seems to me open to question, but certainly you've got two massive subjects already on the 23rd of November, and the medium-term financial strategy, despite the uncertainty, is actually going to be pretty massive. Quite how to handle that, I'm not sure. I do take the Chief Executive's point, the Executive Director's point about the MTVS being not complete by the 19th of October. I'm less bothered about whether it comes ahead of Cabinet or after Cabinet, but it's clearly absolutely crucial for this council because we are facing, I should think, the most difficult financial situation that we shall ever have faced. And frankly, I thought 2017-18 was bad enough when the government grant ran out. But this is actually going to be even more tense. And I do think this is something for the whole council. And maybe we need to schedule an extra meeting of scrutiny.
Okay. Malcolm, you want to come back?
Well, by and large, I mean, Councillor Barnes has just taken the words right out of my mouth. I mean, if members are concerned, bear in mind, and we're getting very close, Chairman, to the 3-hour limit for meetings. If we feel that a meeting is going to exceed that, then perhaps the more obvious thing is to look at an alternative date for a meeting, an additional meeting, given the size of the agenda, because I struggle with the other bits to actually work out which bit members wouldn't want to see at that sort of point in time. So I think what we need to think about is more around how do we accommodate members' wishes. I am conscious that Councillor Dixon is still with us, and I don't know whether he wishes to make comment on the MTFP. So sorry to drop you in it, Councillor Dixon, but I wasn't sure if you wanted to try and make a comment on that.
Yep, Kevin, have you got anything to say?
Thank you, Malcolm. That will be remembered. Robin dropped me a note to say that he thinks it would be wise to defer it, and I do agree. We don't want to discuss figures that are really meaningless, and I think we need to get more meaning into the figures by the time we start to discuss them. So I'm fully supportive of that. Whether scrutiny discusses it before or after, I don't think it really matters. People will discuss it at Cabinet, and scrutiny members, of course, are always welcome at Cabinet to discuss anything that's on the agenda. So we're all one big happy family as a council, and we can take comments at any time. So I think that's the best way forward, Chairman.
Chairman, just as a suggestion, is it possible that just from tonight that we go away to look at whether there are additional dates available around that time that we can look at? I think what members are saying, if I read the mood right, is we have a 3-hour limit on meetings. That is going to be a very large meeting. We're unlikely to get it in time. Having said that, I think it would be useful for the matter to be discussed at Cabinet, so that, as Councillor Dixon has said, scrutiny members can hear the debate at that stage, and Cabinet then refer it on to scrutiny, and we will look at a date for a scrutiny meeting at some point in time, bearing in mind that I was going to say, well, we're not going to lose one because we're going to bring the Pelham forward, but the sort of timetable that we've got around that, and I wouldn't like to commit to that date tonight, Chairman.
Yeah, are you sort of considering sometime sort of early to mid-December, I would assume, Malcolm?
That's being realistic, probably what we're looking at, yes. Yeah. I just need to look at other dates of meetings and talk to my colleagues in Democratic Services as to what we've got in place. And to be honest, it would probably do, given the importance of the MTFP, it would probably do no harm to have a meeting that was all members focused on.
Yeah, yeah.
Which was what the originally the October one was for. As Councillor Dixon has rightly explained, Robin has said why he can't have that. I will look at as members have said, or as Councillor Maynard has suggested, if that's the wish of members, I will look to bring a report on the peer review to that meeting if that's the wish. But I think that's a separate issue to what we do with the MTFP, and I think it's quite clear we can't do it on the night of the 23rd, so therefore we should look at another date to look at it.
Okay, well, if everybody's happy with that,
I agree.
We keep the October meeting in place in case the Pelham project can make it. If they can't make it, it's not the end of the world. We forget about that meeting, because we'll be having an additional one in sometime in probably December, not 2 days before Christmas though.
24th would be a reasonable day, Chairman.
Yeah, we might not have anything else to do, might we? We put the peer review on the items for consideration. I think would be the easiest thing with that. We've got the as was coming up quite vocally at Cabinet last week, the CPE Task and Finish group. We'll be looking at, which is basically look at our car parks and how they've been affected by the decriminalised parking. And I think that's probably it. Let's have a look. Who wants to speak? Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. Just looking at dates, it seems to me that we want to have it ahead of the December Cabinet meeting, which is on the 14th. There's an audit meeting on the 7th. Therefore, I think we're looking at November for the second meeting. And the two dates that seem free are either Monday the 16th or Monday the 30th of November for an additional meeting. So I'm just concerned that we're very clear about what the two meetings are. Basically, one on finance and another on homelessness and the anti-poverty strategy.
No, I think we're not moving anything. The original, from what I see of it, the original meetings for the 23rd, the report on the Poverty Task and Finish group, performance second review and capital programme will be as is on the 23rd of November. And the medium time financial strategy will be an additional meeting sometime in December that have a suits with the Democratic Services. So, yeah, right, Malcolm?
I've just got to fit it in, and I'm sure Councillor Cortell is right. And I haven't got my calendar and meetings calendar in front of me at the moment, but the dates sound about right. I mean, I think again the main thing I would say is with the medium-term strategy, we are looking a long period ahead. That's the whole point, is so that members are fully aware of the decisions that they make now and the impact they have. So yes, Councillor Cortell is quite right. We probably need to consider it before we consider the draft budget, because at least then that feeds into the whole process. But I think the main thing is about giving members a quality of information, as Councillor Dixon has said, that you can make informed and rational decisions on.
Okay, good. Who's coming on here? Let's have a look. Councillor Clark, if you're quick.
I will be quick, Chairman. I was looking at, we've got a report of the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish Group. Now, is that on for the 23rd and 11th?
Yep.
20, it is. Yeah, now that is just waving the flag with Councillor Coleman. It's a very comprehensive and very important task force group. And they're going to have to do a lot of consultations with other organisations because many issues poverty are not issues that Robert can resolve. Are the officers confident they can produce a detailed and comprehensive report by that date on this particular issue?
Very good question, Councillor Clark. I would say that what we can certainly do, and I think it's important that members get an update on the work. Whether it's a comprehensive and final report will be very much dependent on the views of the members of the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish group, because if I was a betting person, which I'm not, I would suggest that it may be more by way of update or direction of travel, but I can't. Obviously, that is very much dependent on the members of the group and the discussions that are had. So it's a very valid question, and I'd love to be able to give you a full answer, but I think that's the best I can do on it.
I like giving you good questions.
Good. Right. Well, I think that's as clear as mud. So if that's it, we've got 5 minutes before we run out of time. So sorry, it's been a long one this evening, people, but it happens. So there we are. So at least we haven't got to drive home. So if that's it, I wish you all good night.
Thank you, Chairman.